Welcome, everyone, to The Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the shepherd of Black Sheep. Hello there to Miss Kim, Teresa, Tim, Miss Kim, not to be confused with Tim, D, and who else? Justice. Welcome, Justice. Butterfly Girl, what's shaking? Tonight, we're going to be going over the interview that Brian Etten did with the insider in law enforcement that said the initial detectives, very inexperienced, which, considering how it's played out, that doesn't really surprise me. And considering the amount of detail many of the other detectives have gone into about what they could have done in the crime scene, it makes me think perhaps they didn't. But we'll go over it, though. And we got some new interesting shows to go over tonight, too. Phoenix, Fox News Phoenix. We might even go over a Duty Ron video. He kind of goes over the same thing. Charity, how are you? Barb, how are you? Please remember to like the video. Bella, how are you? On your way in here. Likes, of course, are free and help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl. Here's Hootie Snacks. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I usually go live a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern every night to talk about true crime and current events. 5 or 6 nights a week, I should say. And I use my unique experience with mental health, addiction, being on the autistic spectrum, narcissistic abuse, and narcissistic family systems to give my unique insights about true crime and current events. Also to note, my friend Christian John, I'm going to be talking to him on Tuesday during the day. That will be a recorded conversation, I feel like. I don't think he would. I can ask him if he's ever down for a live, but those of you who know him, would you like him to come on a live at a point too? He's a good balance from Dr. Salerno because they kind of have like differing views. Lugo, Peg, KB, welcome. Quite the Ramajama. Black Betty Rammer. Yes, everyone should come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Very eccentric group, but also very encouraging and supportive. I would have it no other way. Song Bits, welcome. Oh, what did Bella say? Here comes the rooster, as Lane Staley would say. What did Bella say that was so preposterous? I don't think anything, right? Well, whatever it is, I can't see it now. Jackie, welcome. How are you? Justin, welcome. It was good. She's 96 years old. Like, she wouldn't be able to be here, probably, if not for me. Letitia Staunch has got her court appeal approved. Oh, it's a different case. That's what I'm confused about. My grandmom is 96 years old. She's about to be 97, actually. Hello there, Laura. Welcome. Mac and Cheese, welcome. Justice, there hasn't been too much about Nick Reiner. I think the end of April, there's going to be a court date about him, but we'll check that out. Yeah, I don't know much about that case, Bella. I might check it out at a point. Because also, my grandmom knows when I'm in here, she's not supposed to come in here. And it was something that she was thinking was an emergency, but it wasn't. Not to mention the video that I was playing is not necessarily something that I would want my grandmom to hear. Jamie, welcome. That's right, Justin. I know you like bringing this up. Yep, she's doing good though. She's doing good. How are you, Dana? Ryan, how are you? IP, welcome. Nope, I have not seen the Paradise trial. What's that trial about? Indeed, Justice, May the 4th. So sweet. Thank you, Laura. Kat, how are you? Brian, how are you? Nope, not a hair clip. You can go over what I do every time in those videos. It's a magic wand, of course, not a hair clip. Shorty, welcome. Montana, how are you? The magic wands are reminders to myself and others the little things in life are supposed to matter. That's all. If you can't do the little things right, you're not going to be able to do the big things right. Hello there, MSV. How are you? No, Justin, I will not. Never in the history of telling someone to laugh and smile has it ever made someone want to laugh and smile. In fact, it's one of my pet peeves. Sort of like the women. Remember how women always complain about how men tell them to smile more? And I would say on those comments, oh, I've been undiagnosed on the spectrum, and people would tell me to smile too. And they say, shut up, stop taking the victim points from the women. It's just the women's problem. It's like, actually, no. People tell it to me all the time. Sort of like Philly did the other night too, remember? It's like, don't you need to smile? Smile, smile. Uh, yes, Brandy, you better be smiling. I can hear you smiling. Sort of like in the sales calls rooms, I can hear you smiling. They can hear if you're smiling on the phone. Bella. Yes, they like the video on the way in. Hello, though. Are you? No. It's just something to be playful banter. Bella's smiling in her picture there. Yes, thankfully, no. Thankfully, she wouldn't be able to charity. But it does become a disruption sometimes. Like it interrupts the flow. You get out of the zone. Shadow has a permanent smile on his face, of course. I smile all the time. I think I just have a the male equivalent of resting bitch face, and so people always say something about it. Wendy, how are you? Now let's jump into this. There's a bunch of things to go over tonight, so let's see how this goes.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I appreciate all the support. I'm still here in Tucson, Arizona, investigating the Nancy Guthrtie case. Since Nancy Guthrtie just disappeared, vanished out of her home right outside Tucson here. Still doesn't make any sense. How does an 84-year-old woman just vanish? It's the reason that I am still digging into this every day. And in this episode, something really interesting and unusual. I have an insider, a source close to the investigation, who is now speaking out about several different things, including issues that happened early on with the investigation, specifically when the first set of investigators showed up at Nancy Guthrie's house. I'm going to get into it in this episode of Brian Entin Investigates. All right, hey guys. So yeah, I'm still here in Arizona investigating the Nancy Guthrtie case.
All right, everybody. Brandy is new to the flock of black sheep here. So everyone should give Brandy a welcome. And what else? She found me for my shorts on narcissism, which is how a lot of people find me. So also, Brandy, you would probably like my interviews with people like Dr. Salerno, Christian John, Dr. Simon, Dr. Z. So I think you'd enjoy some of those. We have an awesome flock of black sheep here. Like I said, very supportive, encouraging group. Someone said JLR got arrested. I don't know if that's true or not. If it's true, let me know. We can put that on the back burner. There you go, Brandy. So just some other things about the channel. Like I said, this is my magic wand, a reminder to myself and others, little things in life matter. This is my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. Clearly, since I don't even start these streams until 10 p.m., I am a night owl myself. And a lot of people that had a narcissistic parent, they were criticized a lot during the day. They were belittled. It felt like they had to walk on eggshells. Whenever they tried to be themselves or they tried to express what they really thought or felt, they were punished in some way, or love and affection was withheld. But there was one time of day when the pressure would go away and you were no longer in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that was at nighttime when everyone else went to bed. And to me, this is one of the reasons people that grew up in a dysfunctional family often gravitate towards being night owls. It could also apply to early in the morning before people get up to, but I've seen a lot of that. So that's how it is for me. And if you can relate to that, you probably fit right in. A lot of people fit in here that don't usually fit in other places, or so I'm told. Now, also, as you might have noticed already, I can sometimes myself be a sassopotamus. And as I always tell Kat, sassy is classy. I do that sometimes. But for the very most part, I'm a pleasant panda. Lucky lady, welcome. Yeah, so that's why he is Shadow the Night Owl, the mascot / spirit animal of the channel. Super chats, great way to support the channel and get questions answered, as Mike here knows. Thank you very much, Mike. Doesn't the JLR thing seem cooked up by both parties? I will say it's unfortunate Magnolia's passed, but I would say her thing with Project Veritas and the Washington Post is she's more complicit in that. So both of their pasts are a little bit wild, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Keep that in mind too. So thank you very much for the super chat, Mike. Laura from Anxiety Art Adventures, the channel. Make sure you go check her out. Gifted 5 The Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. So memberships gives you access to the members-only live streams. There was one of those yesterday. There'll be, so far I've been doing them 2 to 3 times a month, but we shall see when the next one is. Thank you very much for that, Laura. Anxiety Art Adventures' name is Laura. So the way that works is YouTube randomly gives them out to people that participate in the channel. So we'll see who the lords of YouTube random decide will get them. Thank you very much, Laura. Yes, this guy is right, MSV. Would you have it any other way? Night Owl Craig. How about that? What a name for the channel. Is that who you're referring to? Hey, what's up, Jared? Been with you for a few videos now. Really enjoying it. You have the perfect name, my friend, to be a member here. You'll fit right in, Night Owl King, or Night Owl Craig, excuse me. I love it. Great username. Danielle, welcome. Dashing through the snow, welcome. Yes, Tim, sometimes the lords of random bless me with a Johnny and gift $500 worth of memberships. That does happen occasionally. Because I do feel like the people that believe in magic often can have a magical life. And what he was saying was he was gifted a lot of money, and the rule was he had to give a lot of it away. And he did give some away to me, so I can't vouch for anything else, but that part was true. But Deb, welcome. What else we got here? Mama, welcome. Mama, I'm coming home. Oh, we got some anxiety cures around here, or remedies, I should say, Justin. Niacinamide, vitamin B3. That's one to check out. Yes, Rooster's on it. Thank you, Rooster. Now let's continue here.
And you guys know, I mean, I've spent so much time here. I've gotten to know a lot of people in the community. I've gotten to know a lot of people in law enforcement. I've made a lot of new friends. And there's a lot of people who want to speak out, who are frustrated with the investigation, including the person you are about to hear from. This is a source close to the investigation who wanted to speak, is frustrated with the sheriff, and frustrated with some things that happened early on in the investigation. Obviously, I have to conceal this person's identity because they would definitely get in trouble for speaking openly with me. Again, this is just a clip. I'm going to have the full interview, which is really eye-opening, coming up tonight. And whenever, depending on when you're watching this, it's Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern on NewsNation. But I wanted to play you this part.
And so that interview, the full interview with this anonymous guy from the Pima County Law Enforcement, I guess it was shown on TV, but it hasn't been posted to YouTube yet. When it's posted to YouTube, you better believe we'll play it, but I don't think it has been posted to YouTube yet, the full clip.
Because this source explains what really was shocking about the early parts of this investigation when investigators first arrived at Nancy Guthrie's house that weekend. The first team that arrived, and how inexperienced this person says that they were. Listen to this. From what you know, were the initial people who responded inexperienced?
The people that were there on the scene were not tenure homicide detectives. They didn't have a lot of experience in homicide at that point, to include the supervisor, who, from my understanding, never investigated homicide before being installed as the supervisor for the homicide unit.
So they've never investigated a homicide before they were installed as the supervisor for the homicide unit. Now, we know from Brian Netton's interview with Sergeant Cross, the union leader, that the reason why that happened is because the experienced detectives left. Or like Sergeant Cross, they were punished. They were punished. Sergeant Cross was working night shift, so he would be able to spend more time with his family. But as a punitive measure, Sheriff Nano shifted him to day shift as a punishment. And when that kind of thing is happening to experienced law enforcement, experienced detectives, people aren't going to like it. And some people are going to leave. So I think that's exactly what happened here. And who's left? Newbies. Newbies like the other guy that got arrested for kidnapping that woman and then trying to proposition her, I'll help you with the case if you sleep with me in this hotel room, and then proceeds to show her explicit videos of himself with a woman and by himself. That was a young detective there, a young person in the law enforcement. Not good.
So wait, so the supervisor who first responded to Nancy Guthrie's house had never investigated a homicide?
Correct.
How is that possible?
Well, so you have decisions made by people that will install friends and people that can do stuff for them, opposed to
Installing friends almost seems like a version of nepotism, favoritism, all about who you know. And for Sheriff Nanos, that might be, well, who can I micromanage? Who's going to kiss my ass? I wouldn't be surprised.
people that are there on their merit and can do the job correctly.
So obviously two interesting things that the person tells me there. First of all, that the supervisor had no homicide experience, had never worked a homicide before, which could explain why the scene was cleared so quickly and other issues that happened early on. And then also the fact that this source says that the sheriff put people in leadership roles based more on loyalty and less on merit and less on people with experience. I reached out to Sheriff Nanos to get a comment on all of this. As of the recording of this video, I haven't heard back as specifically about some of these.
Oh, so we're going to skip then. So Montana, thank you for letting me know. A cop went on the NewsNation channel, and it was a deputy that was arrested for kidnapping. I said detective, but it was a deputy. The deputy was 22 years old. Mike, thank you very much for the super chat. Could Nanos be held liable for malpractice? That would probably be pretty tough to get him on that. Not because he shouldn't be, but more because it's just difficult to get law enforcement on anything. I mean, Sheriff Nanos assaulted a person in handcuffs with a flashlight. And I mean, if someone did that to somebody in law enforcement, they're going to be charged with attempted murder on a law enforcement official. Sheriff Nanos does it to a person in handcuffs. No big deal. So it's notoriously more difficult for there to be consequences against law enforcement. So I doubt that'll happen. But with this recall attempt coming up, he probably should step down. I do think that. Thank you, Mike. Now we're going to take a look at we're going to look at this NewsNation video because it's the full interview. So we are at the 3:44 mark in this video. Mongoose, one of our flock of black sheep, thankfully, let us know that this video dropped. I guess it's got to be this one. But you're on it 6 minutes ago. Woo!
A NewsNation exclusive on the search for Nancy Guthrtie. It's been over 2 months since she went missing, and despite all the national attention, we still have no idea what happened to her or where she might be. And as more time passes, there's more backlash against Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. NewsNation just sat down with a source close to the investigation to get a clearer look at how the case was being handled or mishandled from the start. And what we found out truly shocked and saddened us. And it also explains a great deal as to why the effort to bring Nancy home has moved so slowly. We here at NewsNation have gone to great lengths to keep the source's identity a secret. They will appear on your screen in shadow, and we've disguised their voice. The voice can be a little hard to listen to, so follow along with the...
Oh, I almost missed a super chat here. Wendy, thank you very much for the super chat. I was gifted a membership. I want to pay it forward. How about that? Thank you very much, Wendy. I like how you think. I'm big into the paying it forward as well and trying to demonstrate gratitude. I think that's a big one as well. And I see people are thanking Bethany. I'm not sure what they're thanking her for, but I would like to congratulate / thank her as well. I didn't see what she wrote, but I saw a lot of people saying it.
Captions on your screen, and trust me, it will be worth it. Here's NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton's interview exclusively.
What would you say are the biggest mistakes when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie investigation, from what you know?
Speaking with some people that actually know the intimate knowledge of this investigation have told me that there was an immediate rush to judgment on what was happening at that scene, and it was that Nancy had somehow wandered off. And so they rushed to that judgment, stayed with that judgment, and then ran the investigation as if this was a search and rescue issue, opposed to a possible criminal issue.
From what you know, were the initial people who responded inexperienced?
From what I understand, the people that were there on the scene were not 10-year homicide detectives. They didn't have a lot of experience in homicide at that point, to include the supervisor, who, from my understanding, never investigated homicide before being installed as the supervisor for the homicide unit.
So the supervisor who first responded to Nancy Guthrie's house had never investigated a homicide?
Correct.
How is that possible?
Well, so you have decisions made by people that will install friends and people that can do stuff for them, opposed to people that are there on their merit and can do the job correctly.
Do you think not enough evidence was collected?
The fact that detectives had to return to that location not once but several times leads me to believe that they should have handled it differently. They should have kept it.
That's so friendly. They said, "You stopped the whole interview for $1.99? Bye." We're an interactive show here, right? So people can go watch NewsNation and Brian and Ashley Banfield and Law and Crime Network and Tony Bruschi and Joe Pags. If you just want to watch the thing straight through, that's what they're there for. And everyone I just mentioned, they're friends of the channel. So I encourage all of you to go support their work because they're friendly with me. So I want to pay it forward back to them. So in fact, though, I want to really pay attention to this here. I want to rewind this, if you don't mind.
Review exclusively.
What would you say are the biggest mistakes when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie investigation, from what you know?
Speaking with some people that actually know the intimate knowledge of this investigation have told me that there was an immediate rush to judgment on what was happening at that scene, and it was that Nancy had somehow wandered off.
Okay, so the rush to judgment was that Nancy wandered off, as opposed to a homicide, which is interesting because I could have sworn I heard other people say, actually, they treated it as a homicide too soon. But okay, so then the question should next be, how did that change the investigation if you think she wandered off versus something else, versus an abduction, kidnapping, or in the worst case, homicide, right? How does it change your angle if you think she wandered off?
And so they rushed to that judgment, stayed with that judgment, and then ran the investigation as if this was a search and rescue issue, opposed to a possible criminal issue.
From what you know, were the initial people who responded inexperienced?
From what I understand, the people that were there on the scene were not 10-year homicide detectives. They didn't have a lot of experience in homicide at that point, to include the supervisor, who, from my understanding, never investigated homicide before being installed as the supervisor for the homicide unit.
So the supervisor who first responded to Nancy Guthrie's house had never investigated a homicide?
Correct.
How is that possible?
Well, so you have decisions made by people that will install friends and people that can do stuff for them, opposed to people that are there on their merit and can do the job correctly.
Do you think not enough evidence was collected?
The fact that detectives had to return to that location not once but several times leads me to believe that they should have handled it differently. They should have kept the scene secure.
Do you get the sense right now that there's anyone that they're seriously looking at?
The people I've talked to that are still in the know on this investigation tell me that there's no direct suspect right now, no name on the table.
Is that shocking?
Not with how the investigation's gone so far. I mean, you have individuals
I mean, is that surprising to anyone that there's no suspects right now that they're looking at? I mean, from what we can see, right? That's not surprising to me at all.
That are either lucky as hell or more cunning than a lot of people have seen in the past. If you take the first, extremely lucky, maybe his luck will run out, but so far it hasn't. But if you take the second one, that he was extremely cunning, there's a chance that he may have covered his tracks so well that we may not find out what happened right now.
Obviously, we're hiding your identity right now because you could get in a lot of trouble for speaking out this way. What would you want to say to the sheriff if you could?
I would say that he ruined a great department. It's savable if he steps aside, and I would ask him to step aside.
How would you describe morale at the sheriff's office right now?
I would say right now it's extremely low. This is the lowest I've seen it. There's a lot of embarrassment, especially.
And of course, it's very low. Nobody has faith and confidence in Sheriff Nanos. Zero. Literally zero people. So I can't imagine a situation where morale would be any worse.
With the news, conversations that I've had with Nanos, his interaction with the media.
When the press conferences started happening and the interviews with Nanos, what were you thinking?
Shut your mouth. Stop talking. That's pretty much what we were all saying, is why is he out there saying that?
The no confidence vote, I mean, that every single deputy in the union voted that they don't have confidence.
Mike, thank you for the super chat. Is there software that reverse engineers his voice? There very well could be, but I'm not familiar with it if so. Thank you for the super chat, Mike. I appreciate it.
Confidence in the sheriff, I think to a lot of outsiders was like, wow, I mean, every single deputy.
Yeah, this isn't the first no confidence vote that we've done. So it should have been no surprise to him, especially with what has been going on. So not only our local community, Arizona in general, but just the nation now sees that we have no faith in Chris Nanos.
Is it awkward for people working there?
I think everyone is walking on eggshells.
What would people in the department want to say to Savannah?
Just to explain to Savannah that just because we have an incompetent lead doesn't mean that we don't care, that we don't want Nancy to be brought home safely, and that we're not with her in this. We are completely with her and her family on this.
I mean, and that's understandable that they want to get that out there. Yeah, just because we don't have faith in Sheriff Nanos doesn't mean we're not trying our best to find Nancy and find out what happened and get the person who did this, right? Because unfortunately for the Pima County law enforcement, they're probably getting swept up in the bad press. Now, I have heard some people explicitly say, yes, the detectives are not Sheriff Nanos, but even so, a lot of people are saying that the detective was, or the whole operation was just off the rails.
Incredible. Brian Enton joins us live from Tucson with more on his exclusive report. Brian.
Yeah, Katie, I mean, you think about how unusual it is for someone close to an investigation to speak out this way, but it shows really how desperate they are for people to know what's been going on behind the scenes, the embarrassment that people feel on the inside, and just wanting to get the word out that they do support Savannah and they're working as hard as they can, but that these mistakes early on in the investigation really caused problems. We tried to reach out to Sheriff Nanos to get a comment on all of this, Katie. We have not gotten a response. He's not granted us an interview since the beginning. We had an interview very early on in the investigation, but in the past he has stood by his decisions and stood by the people who he has chosen to investigate Nancy Guthrie's disappearance.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and down.
Chris Cuomo there. He always sneaks up on me. My apologies. So before we get back into the Sheriff Nanos video here, what did you think of what Brian just said there? What did you think about that interview? Yes, please remember to like the video as well. Likes are free. Likes help pay for Shadow the Night Owl's Hootie Snacks. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Leave your DNA on that like button. Maybe spank the like button. And say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. Hello there, Victoria. Any thoughts on that interview that Brian did?
some of these things that were brought up. Again, I'm going to have the full interview coming up later on NewsNation. But it's eye-opening. I mean, you know, as you peel back the layers to what was going on behind the scenes with the Nancy Guthrie investigation. I want to talk more about all of this with my friend and our retired FBI agent, Steve Moore. Steve, thank you for joining me as always. I really appreciate it. I know you've been busy, so that's why you're in your car. So thanks for hopping on with me. I wanted to get your reaction to this interview that we did with this source that's very close to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. One thing the person told us is that the people who responded to Nancy's house initially were the detectives were inexperienced. Specifically, the homicide supervisor had never worked a homicide before. Does that surprise you?
I would wonder how that person was put in charge of homicide if they've never worked a homicide case. To me, that sounds like a political.
And yeah, that can definitely be a political move. And they might have just had nobody else. Maybe there was no one else if all the experienced detectives left. Or they were like Union leader Sergeant Cross, that they were just unhappy. So, and since Nanos didn't like them, why would he appoint the people he doesn't like to the lead of the most important case the department has ever had?
Appointment. But I don't know the facts, but.
And I shouldn't say most important. I should say the case with the most eyeballs on it. That is different.
Never heard of something like that. You work your way up through, and the ones who rise to the top, whoever they may be, generally are the ones you want working homicide. And because the job of the homicide supervisor is not just to click stats and stuff like that. Their job is to monitor the cases of the investigators and make sure that they are following cogent leads, that they have a good strategy for the case, and that they're not going off the deep end on rabbit trails. And so how can you do that if you're the one who somebody else should be monitoring?
Yeah, I would think the supervisor, by definition, would be someone with a lot of experience.
Yeah, and it's funny, in the FBI, there's a lot of consternation about sometimes agents just off probation putting in for supervisory positions when most agents on competitive squads, first of all, they don't want to be supervisors, they want to work the cases, and secondarily, it'll take you 10 years working your way up through the skills, through you have to make cases. Somebody who's never made a case on the homicide squad is not going to be considered for the supervisor. So then you have to wonder why somebody who's never even worked a case got made a supervisor.
One thing that this source said in the interview was that the sheriff, and this is basically a quote, put friends in positions of power versus people based on merit. So friends instead of people.
So Rooster makes a good point. It's not even officially a homicide yet, right? They haven't marked it officially, right? Right now, it's still a missing persons case, but it's not officially marked as a homicide. So keep that in mind as well.
Based on merit. And I know you were in the FBI, where I don't think it's as political because you don't have elected sheriffs and that kind of thing, but did that ever happen in the FBI? And when you would work with local municipalities on cases, did you see things like that happen where someone would get a job because they were friends with someone instead of, merit and how much experience they had?
I'm not going to say it never happened in the Bureau, but it was rare. And the reason is that there's a protocol. You can't just in the FBI say, oh, we need a supervisor here. I like him. He's going to do it. What you have to do is, because it has to be posted nationally to every single FBI agent who's eligible, so that they know that the job is up for posting. people can have a lot to say about whether this person is skilled enough to do this job or whether they have the experience. But one person generally cannot point and say that's the guy, unless they're very high up in the bureau. And I just didn't see that happen a lot. I've seen it more in local police agencies. But again, something like LAPD, they have protocols too. And while I'm sure it happens every once in a while, you really have to jump through a lot of hoops to fight the bureaucracy to get a friend in a position. And what you're describing to me, the allegation that the sheriff used or posted friends to positions that maybe they weren't qualified for, I don't know the sheriff and I wasn't in that department. I can't allege that that's what happened, but it fits the scenario as to why somebody without homicide experience would be the supervisor of homicide.
When I think too with sheriff's offices, especially kind of smaller ones, and you know, Pima County isn't that small, but you know, when a new sheriff comes in and there's a contentious election, I would imagine they want people in positions of power who they feel have loyalty. And there's a lot of people in the department who didn't support that person when they ran. That kind of thing, I think, happens. You know, it gets political.
And I've never existed in that ecosystem,
Right.
as an FBI agent. But I think if I'm elected sheriff and there are some people in certain positions who don't like me, and I don't want them to stay in those positions, I get that. I might remove them from those positions simply because I think they might sandbag me or not loyal to me, but might sabotage me, which would mean that they're sabotaging the department. So what I would do if I needed to replace somebody like that is I guarantee you I would find somebody who knew what the heck they were doing so that my department looked good, operated well. If you pick people who are good at their jobs to work for you, they'll make you look good. If you pick people who can't do their jobs, regardless of the reason, it's going to bite you in the ass.
How important is it to have experienced people from the very beginning stages? Like it's something with the Nancy Guthrtie case, the people who first showed up, the first homicide team that showed up to investigate. I mean, obviously the deputy who's working the call when it first comes in, it's a weekend, maybe that person doesn't have a ton of experience, but you know, when they call in the detectives, now that we're hearing those people were not experienced, how important is it that they have some experience in the early stages, right when you walk?
I mean, it can't hurt if they have experience, right? You would hope people would learn more as they get more and more experience on the job. They learn little ins and outs, tips and tricks. So in my opinion, it couldn't hurt to have more experience. Very rarely would you want the novice, right? Can you think of a situation when you'd want the novice that has never worked one to be in charge? Can you think of a situation like that, chat? I can't. The only time I would ever say you might not want experienced people on it is if their head's not in the game anymore. Like their heart's not into it. They're lazy, they're cynical, and they're just going through the motions. That's the only time I can think you wouldn't want an experienced person there, an experienced detective, a homicide detective. But as it is, especially with the amount of eyeballs on this case, yeah, I would think somebody with experience would want to step up or the opportunity to try to make right by the situation. But it sounds like Sheriff Nanos didn't even give them the opportunity to do that.
Walk into a scene like that.
That's crucial. That is absolutely crucial. It is like, it's hard to explain. All the evidence is fresh. All the evidence is right in front of you. The decisions you make at that point are going to either send you on the right track and accelerate the investigation of the case, or they're going to ruin evidence and send you off in directions that completely derail an investigation for several days or worse. The people who get there first can make the difference between solving a case and never solving it.
And why is that?
Again, it's because the evidence is fresh. The people, I mean, literally, the people are probably closer by than they will be tomorrow. They're probably trying to flee. I mean, people leave, if this crime happened 5 or 50 feet, north of the Mexican border, the first person there would make sure that they took a look at every person who was crossing the border that day, because that would be something that you could only do right immediately. Evidence is perishable. It's like sushi. And, the first guy that gets to the restaurant can eat the sushi. The people that get there the next day, where it was left out on the table, it's not going to be good for them.
I didn't think I was going to hear a sushi analogy in this discussion, but here we are.
That's interesting to think about. You always hear like the first 48 hours are the most important. At least I've always heard that. Is that true? Is that actually true?
It's more than, it's tighter than the first 48. Every hour that the case goes unsolved is exponentially more difficult. When I worked, I remember one school shooting. The guy got away, carjacked somebody, and he was out somewhere in this Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley. We thought he stayed in the San Fernando Valley for 8, 9, 10 hours, and we were working him the whole time. Had we been able to get one more break, we could have gotten him before he left town. Those first 8 hours were crucial, and unfortunately, we couldn't turn him in that time. And somebody died eventually in those 8 hours. And you think about that constantly. What could I have done differently? How could I have got something going? But every single hour is crucial.
Yeah, like with Nancy Guthrie, and it's always, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback these things, but the fact that our source is saying that the supervisor had no previous homicide experience, it just makes you wonder, if you had experienced people that got in there quickly, would they have canvassed the neighborhood faster? Would they have? I feel like there's a lot of things that could have happened. Yeah.
You take charge.
So lucky lady, we found out that kind of what we already suspected. The detectives are not happy with Sheriff Nanos. What proved that already was the no confidence vote. No one had confidence in it. They went more into detail, saying how he wished that Sheriff Nanos would shut up about things, that the person in charge had very little experience, like no homicide detective experience, I should say. And that's the part that wasn't revealed before. So he went into more details than we already knew. But we did already know the rest of the law enforcement there was not happy and is not happy with Sheriff Nanos.
The first one there takes charge. You say, I need a perimeter setup. I need a perimeter setup at all the roads that'll come in and out of this place. I need witnesses interviewed right now. I want people who were here at the time of the crime. I want you canvassing every house right now. None of this stuff was done. And what if you came up, you were flying somewhere across country, and you get into the airline, or the captain says, oh, is this the button? Oh, yeah. Hey, congratulate me, everybody. This is my first time flying a jet. You'd get off the plane. In the same way, if you've got somebody who has never worked a homicide before, and they're the one who responds, I'm not saying that they're not going to be an intelligent person, a good cop, anything like that. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that experience has a quality of its own.
Are there issues, hopefully one day they make an arrest on this case. Do these things become an issue?
Oh, the other big one is that he just reminded me of, no suspects in mind, right? That's what the guy says. No suspects in mind. Now, again, Just like it's not right for Sheriff Nanos to say it. Until you've made an arrest, there really should be no one off the table. So, he said they have no suspects, though.
When this goes to court?
Very easily can be, because if the person made investigative errors, then they would have made errors, legal errors, very possibly. If you don't know how to pick up, or for instance, if you pick up a piece of evidence and in doing so you compromise it, then you've really hurt you've lost that evidence. All you have to do is pick up one thing with your own hands without a glove, and you can almost guarantee you've lost that. And I really need to say, I'm not anti-police. I mean, I've got a brother-in-law, cousin-in-law. My dad was an FBI agent. I was an FBI agent. I bleed blue. I want law enforcement to be run and handled by the best police officers out there, the best investigators, the best detectives, the best agents. I want the best.
And here's the other thing, folks. Regardless of who it is, someone famous or not, if your loved one is missing and potentially murdered, you want the best person on that case, right? Any novices, they should be working with an experienced member, right? That's how you learn. You learn from the people that are already experienced. That's what I would think. And in any case, especially if it's your loved one on the line, you want the best people that department has to offer, right? That's just bottom line. And it sounds like in any organization sometimes, especially if they're toxic, the politics of it all. People lose touch with what's important. And it kind of sounds like that's what Sheriff Nanos did. He kind of lost touch with what was important in the real world, like these human lives that are at stake. Nancy's life was at stake. And granted, it might have been too late already, but you don't know that. You have to act as if that's not true.
Because that lifts the entire law enforcement community up. And so I don't enjoy saying these kind of things. I don't enjoy making statements that might cast a certain department or certain individuals in less than a stellar light. But if you're not willing to say the king has no clothes, then you're just playing along with them. And you've got to be truthful about it in order for law enforcement to be exceptional.
Yeah, and I've never been like an anti-cop reporter. That's never been my shtick. I've always been like a kind of a pro-law enforcement person, honestly. And I've always had good sources with police through all the local markets that I worked at, and now, with my national gig. So I don't, like being criticizing people either, especially when there's an ongoing investigation. And I put a lot of thought into this interview and things that we're not reporting because we don't want to, influence the investigation at all. And obviously we want them to figure out what happened to Nancy. But I do think the media has to hold like sheriffs and officials accountable in situations like this.
Oh, listen, first of all, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I thought you were anti-law enforcement. Yeah. I like they say, I have a choice in the people I podcast with. And
right.
So yes, I don't think that for a moment. But journalists and the media, not that it always happens, but they have a responsibility to hold law enforcement accountable.
That's interesting, Snowbee. I don't know how this would go down, but let's see. Note to selves, people, if cops ever arrive at your house to solve a crime, ask them if they have experience. Set up your own crime scene tape, hand out gloves, and do not allow contamination of the scene. I bet you they wouldn't like that. But hey, when it's your loved one on the line or something very important to you, you want to make sure it's done right, right? And you don't know how well the law enforcement does their jobs, really, unless you know them personally, unless you know about their industry. So, hey, if that works, then I'd say great.
I was very involved in the Amanda Knox case in Italy, that you had a rogue prosecutor just locking up this innocent American girl for a rape and murder. He arrested a woman for a rape. And she spent 4 years in an Italian prison while the Italian and the British media said, oh, this is what they said. This is what they said. Ooh, what an evil person she was, when they should have been saying, prove the evidence, because when we finally got the evidence looked at, it was all bogus. And so the family of the murdered girl never got the closure that they deserved. They never knew for sure who killed their daughter and raped their daughter, even though the evidence was very clear. And Amanda spent 4 years in a prison for a crime she didn't do. And the media owned a part of that over there. So when the media is willing to say the hard things, and not because they hate police, not because they want to defund, not because they think police are thugs or anything like that.
And you're right, Snow Baby. A lot of people, and rightfully so, this is one of the casualties of the social media era and the internet era, is there's so much lost trust in the institutions and the organizations that are supposed to be looking out for us, right? And why have we lost trust? Because many of them have been caught lying and being corrupt and just basically doing everything they can to be out for themselves and for profit. So this stuff gets around now. People learn it. People see it. And the result, people lose trust in them. And I can't tell them, oh, you know what? You should trust them. Because how can you say that to somebody when all it takes is learning history to realize how untrustworthy they are? So I don't know what you do to get that back on track. How do you get people to trust them? Well, you got to be trustworthy. You got to be honest, and maybe slowly but surely you can build trust back. But it's like Lady Gaga said, right? Trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can fix the mirror, but you're still going to see that crack in the bastard's reflection. Similar, right?
When the media wants to go after that small fraction of people who shouldn't be in law enforcement, I think that's necessary.
And also, I don't know if you heard, but we've reported on this before. There was a no confidence vote for this sheriff, where 100% of the deputies in the union voted that they are not confident. And there's a
yes, real quick, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Leave your DNA in the like button. Spank the like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky. They help me pay for Hootie snacks for Shadow the Night Owl here. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat.
A little more than 300 deputies in the union out of roughly 400, with the department, from what I'm told. So, and look, like I said, I've covered other sheriff's offices where a lot of times the unions have issues with the sheriff, like just because they want more pay. Unions are always kind of having issues, but I don't think I've ever seen where it's a 100% no confidence vote.
I don't think I've seen that either. And again, I have to tell you, my bottom belief is that 99% of law enforcement are awesome people trying to do the right thing. So when you get 100%, which is almost all of them, when you get 100% of the people voting, that's a pretty strong indictment. And, I've had supervisors.
And that's the other thing. If you're Sheriff Nanos and you care about the job and doing what's best for the people at all, and everyone under you is against you, and not having any confidence in you, don't you think the right thing to do at that point is to resign? But he's probably thinking the opposite. I'm not going to let these bastards kick me out. I'm the sheriff. I've been the sheriff for years. I'm not going to let them intimidate or bully me. But what do you think, chat? If you got a no confidence vote of everyone underneath you, don't you think the right thing to do is to step away, step down? So type 1 if you think Sheriff Nano should step down. Or type 2 if you think, nah, he's going to be more like a stubborn mule and he's not going to do it. And he's going to go kicking and screaming.
And special agents in charge that I didn't particularly enjoy working for or didn't agree with. But there were always people who would say, nah, you got to see it this way, Steve. You don't understand the whole thing. And while they may not convince me, it was proof that it wasn't 100% of the people who thought you were a fool. Not that I'm saying that they said he was a fool, but 100% is 100%.
Yeah, no, it was, I think it really made a statement. So something else, Steve, is that we were able to confirm that in Nancy's house, there were no signs of foul play. There was the blood outside on the front steps, which we've seen, but inside the house, no signs of foul play that they were able to find. What do you make of that?
So before he answers that question, another thing I would have asked the law enforcement officer that was undercover there, if I was Brian Netton, is, all right, what was on the inside of the home? No sign of foul play. No blood on the other side of the door. Okay. What's the deal with the Nest Cam footage? Right? Have you been able to find anything else besides the thumbnails? Have you been able to find anything else from the day of the abduction, kidnapping, or whatever you want to call it? And then I would have said, where are those Nest Cams? Are there any in the garage? Is there any evidence of Nancy being returned home? And by who? What else would I ask them? I guess that would kind of be it. And then I guess maybe follow up about the DNA as well.
She went voluntarily. Even a woman in her 80s can provide a lot of resistance. I mean, ask policemen who have to respond to incidents with people who have cognitive issues in nursing homes. They fight. They grab things and throw them and swing things. And so to me, that likely means that she at that point was cooperative. She was probably terrified, but she was cooperating at that point, which means she had some control of her fear, which is comforting at that point. But and again, I don't have the full view of everything, but every crime scene I've looked at where somebody was attacked in their room, it looked like a tornado went through.
Yeah, and I said no sign.
And that is interesting, right? No sign of an assault or anything foul play in the house. No sign. So they've taken her from bed and no sign of a struggle at all. That is interesting, right? I mean, I guess I don't know. What would the signs of a struggle even look like when you're 84 years old, right? I don't know.
Of foul play. What I should have said, the exact words that I was given were, which is kind of the same, but no signs of an assault. No signs of an assault is what I was told.
Assault or struggle or anything like that. And I don't think I've ever seen a room where there was an altercation between just two people, where there wasn't broken glass on the floor.
So they may have said something to her like, just be calm, we're going to get money and then you're going to be free. You know what I mean? Maybe there was some kind of conversation.
Yeah. I don't know what they would have said to give her the feeling that cooperating was her best option. Maybe it's just her character to cooperate. I don't know. I can let my mind wander a little bit, but.
And that's the thing, right? What's an 84-year-old woman even going to do to fight back? She's not running away. She's not going to fight him off. I mean, it's just an awful situation, right? The only chance she would even have is if she was armed. Like the old First Amendment, or excuse me, Second Amendment security, right?
I don't want to do that without seeing
I
other
understand.
evidence that they have.
When you go in to investigate a crime scene, like these first people that showed up and this supervisor who we're told had no homicide experience, when there's no sign of an assault, does that make it more difficult? Because I mean, just as a normal guy, I would, I mean, not a police officer, I would think, you know, if you could see where there was something that went down somewhere and broken glass, you would know to focus on that area. But if there's no signs of an assault, like where do you begin?
Yeah, it's tough because any struggle like that gives you evidence. Sometimes it'll give you blood evidence. Sometimes it'll give you evidence of where things happened and you know, information like that. But when nothing is there, it's like walking into a quiet room and listening for voices, and you can't hear a thing.
Is experience more important then?
Oh yes, the harder the case, the more it's like saying you know, is brain surgery harder than knee surgery? Well, yeah, that's why they spend 20 years practicing it. The harder the case is, the more valuable experience is. And I've got to tell you, I can't name more than 1,000 homicide detectives that I would rather have a case than me. I mean, there are so many really sharp homicide investigators. When I went to a crime scene where there might have been a kidnapping or crime scene or something like that, my first inkling was, who can I call? Who can I get out here? I would always call evidence people and say, there's a lot of stuff here. I don't want anybody walking in here, you know, and destroying your crime scene. How do I proceed? And Maureen, who's on your show a lot, Maureen is one of the people that I would try to get in touch with.
Yeah, that was what she did, right? She was like an expert crime scene investigator.
Oh, and she was so valuable for that.
Yeah, I love Maureen. You guys are the
Yeah.
best. The back doors being propped open, you know, we've heard that from Savannah that the back doors were propped open. How does that fit into what we now know about no signs of a struggle, no signs of an assault inside? Does any of that fit?
Rooster, I have to say that again. So, Rooster says, hit the like button if you think Sheriff Nanos is a piece of shit who doesn't flush. So, if so, make sure you hit that like button.
Together?
I just don't know why and how and the back doors were propped open. I don't know if she propped it open to get fresh air on a temperate night. I don't know if I mean, if you've got the back door already open and propped open, then why are you walking in front of a ring camera at the front door? Makes no sense. So I can't figure out why in the world the back door was a something that they did, because if that was the case, there wouldn't be blood on the front steps, and there wouldn't be a need to walk in front of a camera.
As always, I really appreciate Steve for taking the time to talk with me. I appreciate my source for trusting me with this information. Again, I'm going to have the full interview coming up tonight. Today is Thursday, so Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern on NewsNation, and then I'll talk about it more here on my YouTube channel later. You know, I say this all the time, but now that it's been 2 months, I really hope that this case will be solved. I know how hard people are working behind the scenes. There's this task force that has now been set up where there's Pima County detectives, and now there's also FBI, and they're working together. And I'm told that they are working together in a better way now. You remember earlier on in the investigation, the first couple of weeks I was here, we had FBI sources who were saying that there were issues, that the local Sheriff Nanos wasn't, and his team, that they weren't sharing things with the FBI agents. I'm told that for the most part that's been resolved. The task force is working well together, and hopefully there will be a break in the case soon. I am very, very hopeful. And again, I'll have more of this interview later. So appreciate you guys for checking out my channel. Appreciate you guys for tuning in here and tuning into NewsNation and for subscribing to my channel. And I'll keep you guys posted.
All right. So please remember to like the video again. Likes are free. Likes help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's Hootie Snacks. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And Super Chat's a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super Stickers are a great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member gives you access to the members-only live streams. We just had one yesterday. Next one's coming up. Look at this cocaine shark. Why sharks tested positive for cocaine in the Bahamas? Holy mackerel. You don't want Jaws hopped up on that. Where's the video I'm looking for? There it is.
To keep the story front of mind, I mean, look how. If you were watching last week, you saw Brian Enton's report about 2 key dates that a neighbor had said to authorities authorities had asked about video footage. One was January 24th, the other was January 11th, so the same date that the Guthrie family just mentioned. I'm joined now live by NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton with the very latest. Has been on top of it from the very beginning. What do you make of this renewed ask by the Guthrie?
Hey, on the bright side, though, a coked up shark might not be very hungry.
Family for any information? Is it to keep the story front of mind? I mean, look how much else we're talking about. Or is it something more? Are authorities getting closer?
I don't think it means that authorities are getting closer right now, Jesse. I think it's interesting that the statement was initially released just to a Tucson TV station, and you mentioned it in the part you read. It seems to really target the people of Tucson, which goes back to a belief that many have had that the person who did this or the people who did this may have been close to Nancy's house, may actually be from Tucson, or even from the neighborhood where Nancy lives. So I thought that was interesting. Also, for the first time, we are seeing the Guthrie family specifically call out January 11th, name that specific date in the statement, which you mentioned is something we've been talking about because it seems that the suspect or suspects may have been at Nancy's house before, 3 weeks before on January 11th, actually casing the house and casing the neighborhood, Jesse.
And Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, he was asked about that date. He was asked about January 11th today, but then he kind of walked it back.
Yeah, so in the past, we've reported that one of the photos from the front doorbell camera was from a previous day, and he's kind of pushed back on that. Today, for the first time, he actually spoke to NBC, which he always seems to do interviews with them, I'm guessing because it's where Savannah works, because he hasn't been doing interviews with any other networks. But he said to them that initially Google told him that one of the images of the suspect from the front door was from January 11th, but then later walked it back and said that they couldn't be sure that it was actually from January 11th. Our sources have said all along that one of those images is from before the day that Nancy Guthrie was taken.
And look, the reason we have to focus so much on Sheriff Nanos is because he was leading this investigation, and we never want that to be the focal point, but it does become a question. Were there missteps, right? Were there mistakes? He's facing this recall. He has faced a lot of criticism since the beginning of the investigation. I understand on your podcast, you spoke to somebody who worked with Nanos for 4 decades? What did he have to say?
Yeah, this was a really interesting person to talk to with a perspective unlike others who I've spoken to, because he's worked for the sheriff's office for 41 years. He was Nanos's boss for 30 years. Then he encouraged him to run for sheriff and then became Nanos's chief deputy when Nanos became sheriff. And then they had a falling out, obviously, at this point. He's now speaking out saying that he thinks Nanos has actually botched the investigation and that they should have been searching for Nancy much earlier on. This is what he told me. His name is Rick Castigar.
I believe
There he is, former Undersheriff Rick Castigar. Remember him? Brian's talked to him multiple times.
of the searches that began within a few days after the fact were reactionary and were pressured by public opinion and were, we forgot to do this and we should do it now. Was it appropriate at that time? I guess at some point it needed to be done. Should it have been done sooner? Absolutely. Absolutely. What I'm trying to suggest to you, Brian, is that Chris is not interested in other perspectives or other opinions or somebody trying to help him.
And when he talks about Chris,
And honestly, he was the first person to really speak out against Sheriff Nanos. And honestly, I can't say anything he said has been wrong, right? He probably has his own flaws too, but everything he said about Sheriff Nanos seems to be playing out, doesn't it? I mean, can you think of anything former Undersheriff Rick Hastiger was wrong about? And he's got an interesting perspective because he used to be Sheriff Nanos' boss. And while he was his boss, Nanos would kiss his ass. But it wasn't until he was under Sheriff Nanos did he see the other side of him. And that actually inspired one of my shorts videos about narcissists in the workplace, how they'll look and they'll kiss the ass of the people above them because they want to increase their status and they want to appear like a great worker, a great employee to move up in the company. Now, that wouldn't be so bad, like I said in the video, but what makes it worse is how they treat the people underneath them. Since they're above them, they kind of think it's a license to belittle, be hypercritical, to micromanage them, and maybe even sometimes abuse them. And then they won't hesitate to throw them under the bus to save themselves. So they'll throw the people under them under the bus to save face in front of management, etc. So what Sheriff Nanos did inspired that video, as well as other experiences of things I've seen myself.
He's obviously talking about the sheriff, Jesse, and he went on to explain that he believes, that the sheriff wanted to handle this all on his own. That's why he didn't call in the FBI sooner, and that he should have.
And also the Cajun Navy. We've always wondered why not just take their help, who have this expertise.
Yeah,
it's concerning to say the least when you hear it from somebody who knows him. Look, and that's his opinion.
It is 10 minutes to the top of the hour on your Monday morning, and today's show host Savannah Guthrie and her family are asking for people to search their memories as the search for their missing mom continues this morning. Nancy Guthrtie was last seen on January 31st at her home in Tucson, Arizona. And NewsNation national correspondent Brooke Schaefer joins us with the latest updates in the case. Brooke, hard to believe it's been nearly 2 months now. The Guthrie family released a new statement pleading for help from their mom's neighbors.
Yeah, Marky, in this latest post, the Guthrie family now leaning even harder on that Tucson community where Nancy Guthrtie disappeared. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings this weekend released a heartfelt statement saying in part, "We miss our mom with every breath and we cannot be in peace until she's home. We cannot grieve. We can only ache and wonder." The post asked people in that Tucson.
So Shadow the Night Owl just told me a secret, and he said, Jared, my Hootie snacks are getting a little bit low. I'm feeling a little bit fatigued. You're going to need to ask for more likes and more support for the channel. So I'm obliging Shadow the Night Owl here. Please remember to like the video. Likes are free.
Neighborhood in southern Arizona to search their memories around January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st when 84-year-old Nancy Guthrtie disappeared, asking people to again check their cameras, journal notes, text messages. The family says they believe someone in that community holds the key to finding Nancy Guthrtie. The family desperately asking for renewed attention as the mom and grandmother has now been missing for almost 2 months. Marky?
As we always say, Brooke, I mean, somebody out there knows something, and whatever the truth is, just hopefully it finds its way to the surface soon. Brooke Schaefer, everybody, thank you so much for the latest there.
The search for Nancy Guthrtie continues in Tucson. The 84-year-old vanished January 31st. She was reported missing the next day after she failed to show up for church. But nearly 2 months later, the case seems to be running cold. Much of the investigation has been under a microscope, and now there's a lot of focus on Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos over his handling of the investigation and for resume discrepancies. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton joins us live. So, Brian, the department actually entered a nearly unanimous no confidence vote against the sheriff last month.
Yeah, that was a big moment. The Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, he's really been under scrutiny.
You know, by the way, I've asked my grandmom, because she was born in 1929, right? And I'd asked her to come do a show before because I thought it'd be interesting just to get someone's perspective. I mean, how many people do you know in your life that have been born in the 1920s? But her hearing's not very good, and she doesn't really like talking like that on camera. But we'll see. We'll see if I can get her to one day.
For his handling of the Nancy Guthrtie case since almost the beginning. It's now been 52 days since Nancy went missing. Still no arrests, still no solid leads or suspects that we know of. The Board of Supervisors has expressed frustration with the sheriff. They've got an item on their agenda today to discuss what they are calling recently reported issues concerning Sheriff Nanos' work history and apparent related false statements and related personnel, management, internal affairs investigations. And the meeting is happening right now. I spoke with the former chief deputy who worked with Nanos for almost 40 years, who's now actually turned on him and claims that Nanos has not handled the Guthrie investigation properly and did not coordinate ground searches fast enough.
I believe some of the searches that began within a few days after the fact were reactionary and were pressured by public opinion and were, we forgot to do this and we should do it now. Was it appropriate at that time? I guess at some point it needed to be done. Should it have been done sooner? Absolutely. Absolutely. What I'm trying to suggest to you, Brian, is that Chris is not interested in other perspectives or other opinions or somebody trying to help him.
So this meeting in Pima County, it is ongoing right now. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of it because the sheriff is obviously elected, so they can't just vote to fire him. He's elected by the people. There is, however, this recall being organized where a special election could be held to try to vote him out. The sheriff, meanwhile, Sheriff Nanos has said all along, really, that he handled the investigation the best way possible and that he stands by his decisions. Nicole?
All right. So in the midst of all of that and everything that the sheriff is dealing with, Nancy Guthrtie is still missing. Are there any updates on the search for her?
Well, the sheriff has said that it is not a cold case, and that's what we've heard from sources within the investigation, so that's good. We know that the FBI has been back out in the neighborhood following up on leads, that there's still DNA testing happening behind the scenes. So I think it is fair to say it's not cold because there's a lot going on. In terms of whether there's a good lead or an arrest imminent, we don't know of anything like that at this point, Nicole.
All right, Brian Inton live with the very latest. Thank you.
Well, out to Arizona, and the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, is defending his department's work in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrtie, as that search reaches its 52nd day. No arrests, solid leads, or suspects, at least that we know of. Former employees now speaking out with their concerns as the Pima County Board of Supervisors gathers today. Our Brian Enton, of course, on this one, has the very latest for us this evening. Brian?
Yeah, Blake, the sheriff in Pima County is really in hot water. Obviously, the nation has gotten to know him because of the Nancy Guthrtie investigation, but it sounds like there have been issues in Pima County for months involving him. And now there are questions about whether he lied about his resume, questions about his previous job in El Paso, Texas, and whether there were issues there that he did not disclose when he got his job at the sheriff's office. There's a meeting happening right now with the Board of Supervisors in Pima County where they are trying to come up with a possible plan to essentially throw him out, although that's difficult because he's an elected sheriff. There's a recall that is also a possibility where they would take it back out to the voters. A sergeant with the sheriff's office, who is the head of the union, says they just had a vote and there was a 100% vote of no confidence from every single deputy, hundreds of deputies that are in their union. Listen to what that sergeant just said at the meeting.
The 300 deputies I represent speak with one voice. Chris Nanos must show the integrity he once swore to uphold. He must show the dignity that the office requires. He must resign.
So the sheriff, Blake, has said, look, he hasn't done anything wrong in terms of the Nancy Guthrtie investigation. He says he stands by all of the decisions he's made, but there's still no suspect. no arrests, and a lot of questions still about early on whether he cleared the crime scene too quickly, and also whether he was reluctant to get the FBI involved. Blake.
So Brian, I mean, look, this is a live look there in Tucson. This is local government, right? You elect an official. If you think that person is not doing a good job, you go down to the, you have a meeting, you have a hearing. I heard you on the vote of no confidence. That's kind of the way local government works. There's a recall effort in place. I bring it up because at the end of the day, is it still only up to one person, his future, and that being the sheriff himself?
Yeah, it's possible, he could choose to retire or resign, although just based on what I know about him and my interactions with him, I don't sense that is going to happen. And he's elected. I mean, you're right. Yeah. I mean, this is our process. He's an elected sheriff. He wasn't appointed.
And like Sheriff or former Undersheriff Rick Castiger says, he's just not too concerned about what other people think, Sheriff Nanos. And his actions really seem to play out with that too. He's just going to do his own thing.
By the commission. I mean, he was elected by the voters. So it seems at the end of the day, this recall is really going to be the only way for them to throw him out. He only won by 400 votes last time, though, by the way. So it was a very, very close election when he was elected.
How long is he in office still?
He's still got 3 more years.
Wow, 3 more years. All right, our Brian Ensign.
Yeah.
On the story for us tonight. Brian, thank you.
Well, genealogist Cece Moore has helped solve more than 300 cases. And she says when it comes to Nancy Guthrie, she believes investigators.
Quite the track record she has. Over 300 cases she has helped solve. Cece Moore, the genetic genealogist expert.
Genetic genealogy will crack this case. The technique cracked open the brutal quadruple stabbing murders of the 4 University of Idaho students in November of 2022. Investigators in that case were able to link DNA found on a knife sheath at that crime scene to a relative of Brian Kohberger's, and then matched the crime scene DNA to a Q-tip found in Kohberger's parents' garbage can, finally solving that case. Genetic genealogy also solved a series of brutal crimes that stumped even the most seasoned of investigators in California for decades. In 2001, DNA technology linked at least 50 rapes and 13 murders to one man dubbed the Golden State Killer. Investigators worked quietly in the wings for years to try to track him down until genetic genealogy became an option. Detectives put DNA from a semen sample into a genealogical website to identify potential family members of the killer, eventually leading them to Joseph James D'Angelo, getting his DNA from a tissue in a trash can. Well, this week on a new episode of my podcast, The Truth of the Matter, I spoke with that woman who's at the forefront of this tech, Cece Moore. Here's part of that new episode. What are your overarching thoughts about the Nancy Guthrie case and what genetic genealogy can do here? What are the lessons that you've learned?
I don't even like to think of this, but if there is a second crime scene that is discovered or her, remains, then that gives them another opportunity to find DNA. There was a grandfather kidnapped, a case of mistaken identity apparently in Australia, which isn't getting hardly any coverage. And it's really similar to the Nancy Guthrie case. So I was surprised it wasn't reported on more. They found a second crime scene in his case because he was held somewhere for a while. His name is Chris Bogsarian. Unfortunately, his case has been resolved in, the worst possible way, but there was a time where both of these cases were happening at the exact same time. He was kidnapped February 13th, 2026, late at night. Elderly man, 85-year-old grandfather who was kidnapped and held and tortured, unfortunately. They believe it was a case of mistaken identity, but he was taken from his home late at night by armed, masked individuals. There was actually a video of him being pushed into their car. And then he was held at a location where by the time they found the location, he was no longer there, but his DNA was all over there. His blood was there. They had cut off his finger. Terrible. But they were able to prove he had been there. And so obviously the perpetrators were there as well, and they would have left their DNA behind as well. And he was unfortunately eventually found deceased.
So Cece was saying something about a second crime scene. Do you have any ideas what the second crime scene would be? I mean, they haven't mentioned anything about this, but they did look at Annie's house, remember? They did a lot of things at Annie's house. What were they looking for? What did they find? We have yet to hear one thing about that, right? But that was within the first couple weeks there, they were doing that. Brian Netton was out there multiple times.
Had no criminal links and was the wrong target.
Gut-wrenching details.
And his neighbors heard screaming and screaming and screaming going on for a long time, and his dog's barking, and no one did anything apparently until they dragged him out of his house and drove away with him. There was time to save him. People need to call 911. I know people don't like to get in other people's business, but if you hear screaming, please call the police and let them deal with it.
Yeah,
Please.
absolutely.
I mean, we don't want to hope for a second crime scene or remains to be found of Nancy. Of course, we all still want to believe she's alive, but she was held somewhere. That alone is a crime, right? If she's kidnapped and held against her will, that place she's being held is a second crime scene. Or if she was deceased, in the car or something, again, that is also what I would call a second crime scene. And so it's just a matter of time before authorities close in on something like that. I really believe that with all the resources, we leave DNA everywhere. Nancy would have left DNA everywhere she was taken, and the perpetrator would have as well. So it's just a matter of finding that. And I believe, these investigators are incredible at their jobs.
And that's the other thing about it too, right? Not all kinds of DNA are created equal. Top 4 kinds of DNA: saliva, blood, semen, hair. Touch DNA can be hit or miss because it can be harder to get samples above 28%. And speaking of that, some days is our genetic expert, our forensic expert in the chat. Bella is the surgical nurse expert. Some days, who I haven't seen here for a little bit, I have to reach out to her, but she's the woman that I posted her poem, right? And I read her poem on air. I haven't seen her for a couple of days, so if anyone sees her in the comments somewhere, ask her if she's doing all right.
Is your gut telling you about the Nancy Guthrie case?
I would still go back and re-swab parts of that house and look for even like a rootless hair. We can solve these cases now with just a rootless hair. I find it very hard to believe the perpetrator didn't leave his DNA behind. We think he had that bite flashlight in his mouth, and I doubt he kept it in his mouth for the full 40 minutes or so that he was there. So as careful as he was to try to not leave his DNA, he would have taken that out of his mouth and he would have immediately had his DNA all over the outside of that glove. And he had to have touched something.
Stacey Moore does a deep dive into the Koberger loophole that no longer exists when it comes to investigative genetic genealogy, and why she says the tech needed to deconvolute that mixed sample may not even exist yet. To hear that full conversation, you can use your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and find the Truth of the Matter podcast on NewsNation's YouTube page right now, and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and
Everyone's favorite Chris Cuomo.
Let's bring in Ray Carr, retired FBI special agent. Ray, what do you make of, this is a person who is speaking anonymously, who says that the team leader investigating this had no homicide experience.
What this suggests to me is an investigation such as this, when you have a serious experience gap in cases like this, it really can matter a great deal. Like Brian said, the first 24 to 48 hours are very, very important. That's when your evidence is the freshest, your witnesses are the most reliable, and the investigators are working on a solid timeline. And when you have that inexperience of these type of investigators, they're going to miss critical evidence, they're going to overlook inconsistencies, and they're just going to miss things all the way through. They're not going to be able to figure this out, and it's going to weaken, and the case is going to fall apart on them before it even begins.
What about the fact that initially they didn't think it was a homicide? I mean, at the very initial moments, they thought it was maybe an elderly person who had wandered away. Then there was possible, speculation right away that it might be for a kidnapping. That was within 24 hours, I believe, or at least early enough on that in other words, if they didn't show up on the scene thinking we have a homicide, could that be an explanation for why they didn't assemble an experienced homicide unit?
When you have homicide investigators that are seasoned, they move very fast, but they're very methodical. They know how to secure a scene, document a scene. They know how to find things and see things that other people don't see. They know how to talk to alibis and witnesses. And if someone's story doesn't make sense, they know how to call that out. And they also know how to keep things focused. What you have here is the lack of experience. You have a mistake that's made. And the first mistake you make is usually the most costly.
Well, we did see that
and I wonder what he thinks is the biggest mistake.
After several days of processing the house, they removed the crime scene tape and anybody could walk up to the front door. And then a couple days later, they put the crime scene tape back up. So they secured the scene, unsecured the scene, and then secured the scene, which even before this reporting that of Brian Entin.
Right. Opening and closing the scene like that, not taking the mat. I definitely see those as mistakes. Let's see if he agrees.
In Tucson today, there was a lot of question about what's going on with this investigation and these decisions.
And on my time on the job, I've never seen that happen. So again, that just goes to show you that the lack of experience at the top here.
So he'd said he'd never seen a crime scene open and closed like that. And granted, if you wanted to be very charitable, just the fact that this is such a popular case might make people make more mistakes. They shouldn't, but that can certainly be the case. But he's saying he has never seen this ever. So that does speak to a lack of experience. It also speaks to bad leadership, because who put those people in positions to make mistakes? Sheriff Nanos. And a good leader needs to take extreme ownership for everything that happens under his or her command. And you must take a little more than your fair share of the blame and a little less than your fair share of the credit.
Is really affecting this investigation as it moves forward. And the people that are really suffering are the Guthrie family.
Yeah, yeah, they really are. They deserve answers. God knows, we hope they get them soon, and that precious evidence and leads have not been irrevocably lost in all of this. Ray Carr, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching.
And while we're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Leave your DNA in the like button. Maybe spank the like button too. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I go live almost every night at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern to talk about true crime and current events. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. And remember, super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers are a great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member also supports the channel and gives you access to the members-only live streams. That's where we have some fun. We sometimes can be a little more inappropriate because we're not under the burden of YouTube's rules there. And we have a little bit of fun. Kind of let your hair down a little bit.
The search for Nancy Guthrtie has captivated the world. And for more perspective on the case, we wanted to talk to a panel of experts. And these are law enforcement experts. They have all dealt with high-profile investigations. So we wanted to bring them in now. Our panel of experts have all investigated high-profile cases. Matt Murphy is a former homicide prosecutor and a legal expert.
He's actually one of my favorite guys, Matt Murphy, from what I can remember, right? I think we saw him maybe on Ashley Banfield or Brian Entin. But either way, I liked what he had to say. And to the right here, we have Jen Coffendorfer, of course. To the left, I'm not sure who she is, but I think we're about to find out.
Jennifer Coffendorfer is a retired FBI special agent, and Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick is a forensic genealogist. We've had her on our program a couple of times. She's been a part of...
All right, so a forensic genealogist. So she's similar to Cece that we just saw. And this is Fox Phoenix. So this is the Fox in Arizona by Nancy.
Some pretty high-profile cases here in the Phoenix area. So thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Matt, I want to start with you. As a former homicide prosecutor, you've really seen it all, you've heard it all, and having evidence is so crucial for you when you go to prosecute a case. Right now, it seems that there is not a lot of evidence that any prosecutor could go into court with. Give me kind of your perspective on the prosecutor side, just watching from afar.
Well, number one, there's obviously a lot of evidence we don't know about. I don't think any of us have seen or heard of what was happening actually inside the house. One of the first statements that came out talked about how she was snatched out of her bed. We don't know the basis of that. And the sheriff came out and said that one day, then he backed off it, and then he kind of said it again, and then Savannah Guthrie said it. So a lot of this is kind of clear as mud, right? But from the prosecution standpoint, I worked in what's known as a vertical prosecution unit, where we would work hand in glove with the detectives who are working on a homicide. I had the great honor of working with Jennifer's colleagues many times with the FBI on task forces similar to this one. So from the prosecution standpoint, it's way better when it's a state case, first of all, unless there's a federal angle. The FBI is there to assist, and in my experience, they're wonderful. But look, one of the things I've wondered all along is where Laura Conover, the elected DA of Pima County, has been. And I want to be fair to everybody, but look, she was a ghost for the first month. And I think that I got a problem with that from a prosecution standpoint. Maybe they're working super hard behind the scenes, and she just, didn't say anything or kept her head down. But we really haven't seen it. I think I've only seen one public statement by them saying we're working on warrants or something like that. But this is something that the two elected law enforcement officials, that's the sheriff and the DA, should be working closely together in conjunction with the FBI. And I think that the fact that this case is where it is today represents a failure of that. That's not at all a criticism of the hardworking law enforcement officers, the FBI agents, or the detectives behind the scenes on this. But this has kind of the stink of political interference from day one.
Yeah,
in my view.
Leadership obviously matters, and especially in a high-profile case like this. Jennifer, let's talk about the FBI too. And early on, there had been talk that there had been some infighting between the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. What was your take on that? Because then we heard from the sheriff that, hey, no, that wasn't a problem.
Well, of course, it's interesting, this question you pose, when you consider the history. So for approximately a 5-year period dating back several years ago, the Pima County Sheriff, Sheriff Nanos, was under investigation for misappropriation of funds, and his department was being investigated by the FBI. So it's kind of an interesting situation, of course.
And that's something we went over before. That was about the RICO funds. Sheriff Nanos did not like that investigation one bit. And according to former Undersheriff Rick Hastiger, that was the origin of his resentment against the FBI and his feud with them.
He was exonerated and somebody else was charged in that, but nevertheless, that always can cause a little bit of a rift that could carry on through this. Beyond that, typically, when the Bureau comes in and you're working sort of hand in hand, or supposed to be, there can be some animosities, but I'll tell you, it is not at the street agent and street detective level. It's typically at the higher levels. The street agents work very well hand in hand with the locals.
Yeah, I actually know a few personal FBI agents here in the Phoenix area, and they've been down in the Tucson area, and just on a personal level, they are fantastic people. So I'm sure that you would kind of comment about that too, and say the same thing if you if you knew some of them here in the Phoenix office. Dr. Fitzpatrick, you are the blood expert, the DNA expert. I think we all kind of feel like this case has gone cold right now. So what would be happening behind the scenes to try to get a DNA match, whether it's...
There's that word cold. Nancy Grace would not like hearing that. We saw and heard what she said the other day. Ooh. I would like to see this woman say that in front of Nancy Grace.
you know, the familial DNA. What is happening? We know that the DNA was sent to the lab in Florida, and I know that you've spoken highly about the lab and the work that is done there. But what is going on behind the scenes right now to try to solve this case?
Well, first you got to assume that there's DNA there at all from these kidnappers, and I'm not sure there is. Because if you think about it, what I think happened is they spent minimal time in the house. I think whoever the guy in the porch was, he was there to remove the camera, not to, you know, he wasn't surprised by the camera. If you watch him, he's removing the camera. Went somewhere, waited to see if there was an alarm, had an accomplice in a car with him hidden somewhere, went around to the back of the house after nothing happened, climbed over the wall, triggered that motion detector, and after a few minutes, went through the back door with gloves on. No DNA there. So he goes in, he gets Nancy Guthrtie out of bed. He walks her to the front door. He opens the door with gloves on again. And he's meanwhile called his accomplice with a walkie-talkie, walks the evidence out the front door into the car, and they're gone. So first of all, you've got to assume, well, it's logical to say they spent minimal time in the house, whoever this was. And, you know, first you got to assume, did he leave DNA at all? Well, there's a scenario where he did not. So nevertheless, you do have to swab the house. You have to look. I don't know the state her bed was in. I don't know her bedclothes. Maybe she left some stuff behind. They have to.
Remember, they've said no sign of a struggle in the house. So whatever that means that the bed would look like, right? No signs of a struggle. Also, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Spank the like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky, or leave the DNA of your choice on the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And most importantly, say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Got a great group of people, very supportive and encouraging group. A lot of people here are black sheep that haven't fit in other places, but they say they fit in here. A lot of people have been victims of abusive relationships, narcissistic abuse, so they understand it from that dynamic as well. Maybe they've had a narcissistic family, dysfunctional family. So, and there's other versions of it too, of course, but that's just a general guideline. Come in and say hello.
Swab all that, but the problem is, if there's any DNA, it's going to be a mixture, and that mixture is going to be dominated by Guthrie DNA. And while there is a lot more capability to deconvolve mixtures using CODIS and the standard procedures, with forensic genetic genealogy, it's very difficult, and especially when you have you have an overwhelming amount of Nancy's DNA around. Any kind of foreign DNA, which may be from the kidnapper, may be from a friend, may be from somebody else that was repairing, or the housekeeper, that's really going to be hard to extract and work with, or to even observe and look with. So I think that they trying their best. They did try the gloves in the area. Okay, that's easy. But actually inside the house, it's very similar to John Benet Ramsey case, where the Ramsey DNA was all over the house. So in this case, the Guthrie DNA is all over the house. So I know that lab is doing well, but I'm not sure what they have to work with, if anything at all.
Now, remember, some days, name of Reagan, our forensic expert, said it needs to be 28% of one sample of DNA for it to be even possible to do genetic genealogy, right? So thank you some days, wherever you are. And Mayor, I love hearing this, Mayor. Jared, I used the Curb Your Enthusiasm music in my mind the other day to avoid Jade. It did help. That is awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Jade is justify, argue, defend, or explain. And we tell people to not jade with narcissistic people or other toxic people. And one of the ways to do that, to disempower them in your mind, is to imagine music like the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song, just to lighten the mood for yourself, not for them, but to disempower them a little bit, to make them seem a little more ridiculous. Or maybe think about Charlie Brown's teacher, wop, 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 wop. But whatever it is, whatever helps, we're all for. So I wanted to share that success story there by Mayor. Very happy to hear that.
Yeah, you brought up the John Benet Ramsey case. I've said that kind of from the beginning, just being down in Tucson, witnessing the media circus. And not only do you have national media, but now you have, people with an iPhone who believe that they're like a journalist, a blogger, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it is an absolute circus down there, and it has really captivated, the world's attention. Matt, you have kind of a different take, and you do not believe, your theory is that this was a kidnapping at all. Is that right? Can you talk about what you believe happened?
Well, no, I think that my point all along is that we have to have an open mind to all possibilities, including the potential possibility this was a sexual assault from the very beginning. And what can happen, I know Jennifer has seen this probably firsthand more than once, like I have, where somebody will develop a theory and they really like that theory, and it's almost like a puppy. It's cute, they love it, and they focus on that to the exclusion of everything else. In cases like this, we keep hearing the term eliminated. This person's been eliminated. Nobody's really eliminated until you have an active, viable theory on what happened.
Also, we're all hyped to see No Hype in the chat. Special announcement for him.
You've pretty much solved it. And I did it long enough. I spent 17 years in homicide, where more than once I believed a murder was one thing, and then all of a sudden you would encounter some radical left turn, and it turned out to be something completely different. So my point all along is everybody has to have an open mind in this investigation, and everybody has to have an open mind in the public. As far as the media goes, Sheriff Nanos called the media in, as we all remember, at that famous press conference. He brought the media in to bring attention to the case. I have no problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that either. But let's go over something real quick. Julie asks, please refresh my memory. What is JADE? JADE is an acronym that stands for justify, argue, defend, or explain. And that is what narcissistic people and other toxic people, they are experts at getting people to JADE. Why? Well, often they will be antagonistic, belittling, condescending. They'll put down others. They'll misinterpret what you say, twist and distort what you say, mischaracterize your motives. And all of that can make people want to justify themselves or argue with them or defend themselves or explain themselves. But when it comes to narcissists, it's just not a good idea, because they are committed to misunderstanding you. They don't have the same goals that you have. They just want to win and get their way. So that's why we say don't jade. And some other tools besides the curb your enthusiasm music would be things like BIFF, brief, informative, friendly, and firm, or practicing gray rock. That's when you're calm and boring and you don't give any emotional reactions. You don't share anything more than what is necessary, and you keep things to logistics only. So those are just a couple tools.
But then, he also hasn't been really Johnny on the spot with answering some of those questions. This is a tremendously sad case, but I think that anything is on the table right now, and people have to remember that until they solve it. Everybody has to have an open mind. I know Jennifer's colleagues know that. I know the working detectives of Pima County, who I worked with before, with Pima County on a murder out of Newport Beach once, and they were excellent. And as I've said, FBI is excellent to work with on these task forces. I think that this is a problem with leadership.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a doctor. You go see a doctor and they've already made up their mind about your diagnosis, and without looking at everything, all the different symptoms and all the different possibilities. And unfortunately, I think that could have happened here. Jennifer, what do you think about that and what Matt just said?
Oh, well, I agree wholeheartedly that you have to keep your mind open. You have to go where the facts lead you. And in this case, those facts seem very muddled at this point. I am an Occam's razor type investigator. In other words, just through my experiences in almost every case, Occam's razor, meaning the simplest solution is usually the solution. When you start to get really convoluted and, X, Y, Z has to happen for all these things to fall into place, that's when you can really get lost in a case. You just need to follow those facts. So when I look at that, that would say this was an abduction, a purposeful abduction. But to Matt's point, 41 minutes in that house, and that's minimal. That's minimal. And we don't know how many others might have been involved, if this was a lone actor or not. I tend to believe that other people were involved because my experience tells me that.
Well, and what we always say, and Ashley Banfield's correct about this, just because the time between the Nest camera being knocked off and the pacemaker being disconnected from the app does not mean they were in the house the entire 41 minutes. It does not mean that in any way. Maybe they were only in the house for 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. But those times, they don't tell you anything more specific than that, right? So Jen just said 41 minutes in the house, but not necessarily true. But please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes help pay for Shadow the Night Owl Here's Hootie Snacks, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Shadow also likes super chats and super stickers and people who become channel members, because people who are channel members get access to the members only live streams.
My experience tells me that you would not go and do a kidnapping abduction by yourself. And you combine that with the fact that, at least my view of the camera footage, is that there is a small antenna that's sticking out of the pocket, not a jammer, a small antenna that would be that of a walkie-talkie, which is a hand-to-hand radio device. And that's what it looks like to me. So why do I need a walkie-talkie if I don't have another person involved in this? Also, the back of that house, there were locksmiths that were called in. We've seen the footage at the back of the house. So why were they back there performing work on the back door? I just believe it's possible that there could have been somebody enter. If you look at the footage, he reaches up initially, porch guy, when he comes to the porch, he places his hand over the camera. He then goes and pulls up vines and sort of waves them around and puts them sort of in front of the camera. All the while, with his left hand, he's trying the door, which made me think, is there an accomplice in there that was supposed to open the door for him? And he's trying to get the attention in some way. So, in other words, I think Occam's razor likely kidnapped.
Maybe Shadow the Night Owl and I should partner with that woman from TikTok, just like an owl comes out at night woman who does the song. I should partner with her.
Having gone horribly wrong, and the idea of sexual assault, I think, certainly could have played into this.
Oh, yeah, I know. It breaks your heart if that is what happened. The three of you, do you think she's alive at this point? I mean, I know that we're assuming it right now, but I mean, this doesn't look good at all. Dr. Fitzpatrick?
I mean, chat, does anyone think she's still alive at this point? I mean, I don't. I think that's pretty clear. It would be one of the most miraculous things of all time if she was still alive. But chat, does anyone think she's still alive? I mean, press 1 if you think maybe, but I don't think so. So 2 if you don't think so. 1, there's a possibility. Holding out some hope.
I don't think so. And I would like to say, I do agree with Matt. We have to keep our eyes and ears open, our thoughts, consider just about everything. I absolutely agree with that. And one thing, we don't know the interior of the house. We don't know what condition, and that was causing a lot of these theories and speculations. That would give a lot of hints onto what really happened. My thought is that the safest place you can be is in your home. And the highest risk thing, well, one of the highest risk things is that you break into someone's home. So that's why the theory I propose gives the minimum amount of time in the home. Just go in, take her in. But is that true? We don't know, because if we knew what her bedroom looked like, maybe that would tell us. So anyway, I think that there's a lot of speculation. We don't really know. I don't think she's with us anymore simply because she needed medication. She was a heart patient, and there was her blood, expirated blood on the foyer going out into the street. That was expirated. That's like somebody leaning over and the blood coming straight down onto the tiles. And then there was a pool of expirated blood where it looked like somebody had a nosebleed or was coughing. So those are signs to me that she's 84 years old. Those are signs to me she may not be with us anymore.
Yeah. Matt, do you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I hate to say it, but look, the blood dropouts remind me of a case that I had, my Judy Law case, where she killed her boyfriend, managed to get him out of the house, and buried him someplace in the desert, not far from Pima County. We think in California, but maybe over the border. And you know, that's a common feature of Southern California, Mojave Desert, you know, Nevada, Arizona. Oftentimes when you get bodies out into the desert and get them in a shallow grave, we don't recover them. And so they have to be treating this like it is a homicide, and they have to be devoting the resources. I think they've done that, but you need your best detectives on it. And you need to make sure, remember, figuring out what happened is only half the battle here. Once they identify a suspect, and I believe eventually this case will get solved. I personally believe that's going to be after a change in leadership in Pima County. But it's going to be solved eventually. And I think that when that happens, they're going to look back and hopefully they will be making all the right decisions now. I got very nervous when I heard Uber Eats drivers getting arrested with like SWAT teams outside. I don't know how much of that is true and not true, just what I read in the media, but that's that heavy-handed type of stuff. If that's happening, I guarantee it's against the advice of the FBI. And that could be performative by the sheriff, and it's resulted in nothing so far. Yeah. So they have to treat it like.
His connection's getting weak. But that's my next question for you all, chat. Do you think this is going to be solved? Ever? Press 1 if you think this is going to be solved ever. Press 2 if it's just not looking good and you don't think so. You think this could be a decades-long, if not permanent, cold case. So 1, you think it's going to be solved. 2, no, you don't think so.
The homicide, sadly, I believe she is dead. And hopefully they're not making mistakes like that, because one mistake like that, and if they kick a door down, for example, out of enthusiasm, and there isn't a DA reining that in, or the FBI reining that in, that can lead to the suppression of evidence. That's a disaster for the prosecution, and that's what everybody has to remember. Like, figuring it out is only half the battle. Actually bringing people to justice and bringing justice to the Guthrie family is the second part of this whole thing, and hopefully they avoid the mistakes that can ruin that type of case.
Jennifer, because you believe that more than one person was involved, are you surprised with this $1 million, reward out there, $1 million plus actually, that someone hasn't come forward if more than one person is involved?
Well, of course, I am keeping my mind open to other theories, but that's the one that right now the facts for me turn toward more in the realm of possibility or probability over just possibility. But no, I think there's so many factors weighing in. First of all, if an individual recognizes Porch Guy, there's a very big chance that they just can't believe that that possibly would be him. That's one. Number 2, they could be fiercely loyal or afraid of that person. And in that case, they also aren't going to come over.
Correct. Right. I just think the likelihood's low that someone's going to come forward and claim the reward. If anything, because it puts them in danger, right? Doesn't it put them in danger to claim that reward? More than likely. I mean, yeah, you might try to go into a witness protection program, but still, like do you want to give up your entire life for $1 million? Might sound good at first, but you fast forward the tapes and then maybe not so much, right?
Despite 1.2 million reasons to come forward. The other possibility, of course, is that somebody who knows him has never even seen these photos. They could be across the border. They could be someplace that they are just not in the know. I know everybody thinks that everyone knows who Nancy Guthrtie is and all the details, and everybody's seen this. I can tell you it's a minute population that actually is up to speed at all on this case when you look at the vast majority of Americans.
Yeah, that is interesting because in a newsroom, we all know everything. We know every little development that has happened, and the average American doesn't. And some people, if you're not watching the Today Show, you have no idea who Savannah Guthrie would be. Dr. Fitzpatrick, what do you think it will take to bring someone to justice?
I think it's all the other evidence. They know what's in the house. We don't. That hasn't been released. So, okay, a lot of speculation there. I think it's going to be other evidence. That obviously, there's probably no cell phone. If they had a walkie-talkie, maybe it was a burner phone. Maybe somebody saw something. Maybe they'll retrieve some of the videos in the area. Something like that. Something else other than what's in the house. Somebody will step forward, finally have the courage to step forward, or somebody's debating, maybe it's, so-and-so, my neighbor, it looks, I don't know. I don't want to report it. Something like that. Somebody will know something, or there'll be other piece of evidence found in the area or among the, video, among the neighbors, something like that. I don't really think it will be found in the house so much for reasons I've already said.
Were you guys surprised, and Matt, I'll throw this to you, that once we had, the exact backpack, and once we had that video and the photos, that something didn't happen, didn't come about because of that?
Well,
I wasn't so surprised.
Dr. Fitzpatrick says wasn't so surprised. Matt, go ahead.
No, I agree with Dr. Fitzpatrick on that one. This is stuff you can buy at Walmart. There are tens of thousands of these. So, the FBI is actually very good at kind of picking apart videos like that. But this was a very common backpack. I think, guys, that looked like something was rolled up in it. That was significant, I think, because that makes it look like it's potentially a tarp, part of the plan to abduct. I mean, there's, my brain, after 4 years in sexual assault and 21 total in vertical units, I immediately thought rape kit, but I look at this through a very jaded lens. I know Jennifer does too, and Dr. Fitzpatrick. But can I comment really quickly on something else that Dr. Fitzpatrick said? When she talked about how finding DNA in the house, I just want to emphasize how right she was on that. There's an expression that I heard from our crime lab, who is Mary Hong, who Dr. Fitzpatrick probably knows. She was phenomenal, and she used to say all the time in our murder cases, it's a dirty world. In other words, when you swab a house, you're going to find all kinds of DNA inside the house. But the way those get, at least the video that we saw of the one person with gloves and that balaclava on, there is, unless it is a sexual assault, Dr. Fitzpatrick's absolutely right. There's a really good chance they didn't leave any DNA in there. Or the famous gloves that we found down the road, where Sheriff Nanos did another press conference and he didn't know if Savannah Guthrie's mother's DNA were on the gloves. That you're going to find DNA all over the place. The chances of it coming back to your suspect is a totally different matter. So the fact that you get DNA, you're going to get DNA on every swab. But connecting it back to somebody that fits the profile, I wouldn't at all be surprised, guys. Also, if this person has been booked in Pima County Jail for something else, or maybe something similar. But again, that's investigative stuff behind the scenes that we just don't know.
Yeah. Do you all think because...
And again, with the touch DNA that they have to hope that it's just not some random person too that Nancy Guthrie encountered. That's the thing with touch DNA, right? Anyone she was around earlier that day. Who? Annie, Tommaso, anyone else who was in that home that day with them, right? I don't know who else was there. Was there anyone else in there that day? Have they said? So Nancy Ubers to Annie's house, and there was Nancy, Annie, and Tommaso. Was there anyone else there? As far as we know, I don't think we know. But there's also anywhere Nancy was throughout the week, there could be some of that touch DNA lying around. But generally speaking, the longer ago it was, the less likely a sample of over 28% would be there, right? Also, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. And subscribe to this channel if you're not already.
Outside looking in again, that there have been problems, and Sheriff Nanos, I mean, he could be recalled because of this as well. Do you think that could make it difficult, though? I mean, maybe like a defense attorney would be like, hey, I'll take the case, I mean, assuming that there is a suspect moving forward. But again, we're all just assuming things, right? But Jennifer, I mean, do you think that a defense attorney could be like, hey, there were all these problems. The Pima County Sheriff turned over the scene, early to the family. Then they brought it back. Then they sent more people in, just outside looking in.
Right. And I always hate to armchair quarterback because I've been in that seat and you can't be perfect. However, there is a glaring mistake that was made with that crime scene.
Glaring mistake. What do you think Jen's going to say? Chat, let me know. This is a fill in the blank question. What do you think was the biggest glaring mistake in this case? I'll refrain from sharing mine, but what was yours? What's the biggest glaring mistake that they made? I'll give you some time to think about it before Jen Coffindoffer answers here. Della says doormat. I could see that being it. Nana nuts. Ooh. Ryan, welcome. Opening the crime scene too soon. That's a good one too. Matt or camera mount. That's another good one. No crime scene tape. That's another good one. Not checking the blood and the foliage in the blood. That makes sense too. Brenny, welcome. S. Lee. I bet she says doorknob. Can anyone think of a doorknob without thinking of Home Alone and the doorknob being hot like Home Alone? I'm a big fan of popcorn, Miss Kim. You know that. That's a good one, Rooster. Not searching the area. I think it is a good one. Connie, welcome. Didn't treat it as a kidnapping, but rather a senior wandering off. That's a good one too. That's what the undercover guy said. Laura is about to be inappropriate. You know what else is hot? Let's hear it, Laura. Drum roll, please. And let's see what Jen Coffindoffer thinks is the biggest glaring mistake.
Hours, it was evaluated by the evidence response team of Pima County, and then that entire scene was turned over. The mat wasn't taken, and standing over the mat was porch guy with a flashlight in his mouth. Just the saliva involved with all of that, and the fact that the shrubbery that he took, that he sat there and grabbed, he could have made micro tears in that glove, and possibly some DNA could have been deposited there. As I said, taking out that flashlight in his mouth could have deposited saliva on the gloves, and then the gloved hand could have touched something in the house. It's just shocking to me. And the other piece is that there were 4 total searches done. You really only ever get one chance at a crime scene to do it right. The FBI came in, I think on day 4, and they did their own crime scene. They forgot some things. They forgot the car, Nancy Guthrie's car. They forgot the cameras on the roof.
Lots of missteps there. So she basically said the DNA, right? The DNA from the saliva and the flashlight and the gloves. Then maybe it could be on the doorknob and anywhere else. And I agree. I mean, do you think the inexperienced detectives knew to look at all that? And the problem is we have some hindsight being 2020 here too. We didn't see that Nest Cam footage right away, right? That Nest Cam footage was what? A week or 2 later, minimum. So we saw what the person on the Nest Cam did. They didn't have the benefit of that knowledge in the first 48 hours. But here's the thing. Savvy detectives would know to think that and say, okay, well, let's check the doorknob. Let's check things dropped. And they would know in advance to look for those things. Experienced law enforcement would. Inexperienced, maybe not.
So they could go back and get more evidence. Then they went back for a fourth time to search that septic tank. This to me is the predominant error right now in this case. That is a dream world defense attorney.
Yeah. We were shocked in our Fox 10 newsroom. One of our photographers, like a couple days later, walked right on up. And I'm sure, you've seen video from elsewhere too. And he just went on up, to that front porch and got video of the blood and was walking on the front porch. And that's why we said, we're going, wow, if you're a defense attorney, are you kidding me? And Matt, I know that you'd also talked about the fact that federal prosecutors didn't even show up to the house. It was almost like a month later to look at everything.
Yeah, look, a defense lawyer will have a field day with what we've seen so far. And they've got a job to do. Ultimately, I believe somebody will be arrested for this. And that is why, look, there needs to be, you talk about a recall. This has been an abject failure of law enforcement leadership, in my view. I think it's been poorly handled. I'm with Jennifer 100%. I've been on that stage. I want to be fair. I hate it when talking heads would get up and criticize anything that my cops or my FBI agents or that I was doing in a case. But at a certain point, you gotta, you call for the media's help. You gotta be prepared to take the heat. And I think that goes to Laura Conover as well. I think this case ultimately is going to need a fresh set of eyes from the top, and that is going to require new leadership by the voters in Pima County, in my opinion.
Before we go, I want to ask all of you, Dr. Fitzpatrick, I know you've dealt with families, victims' families too. What would you say to the Guthrie family right now? I mean, I can't even imagine, what they've been going through. And Savannah, in the news business covers horrible stories like this. So I'm sure she never envisioned this would actually happen to her either. But Dr. Fitzpatrick, what would you say to the Guthrie family? And then I'll ask the other two that same question.
Well, in spite of, like, I'm not in the, legal part of it and the investigative part of it, I would just say, hang in there. We're doing the best we can. There's been mistakes made. Hopefully they'll be corrected if they can. If they're not, we'll do the best with what we have. Just everybody wants to find her. We're all on your team. We're all on your side. As a community, we are doing the best we can, even with the mistakes. We'll try and correct them. We're all on your team. We want to see this solved. It may not be solved today. It may not be solved tomorrow. But one day, I don't believe in closure because somebody's never coming back. I mean, I believe in release. Once you know what happened, you can come to terms with it and you can move on with your life. Until then, you spend so much psychological energy and hope. You're burning a lot of bandwidth, so to speak, trying to wonder what happened. But once you know, you can let that go and you can get on with life. And that's what we hope for them.
Yeah. And Jennifer, I mean, justice is kind of the big word, I guess, now for the family.
Well, finding out exactly what happened to Nancy, I think, is the biggest question that I hope law enforcement can resolve for this family. What happened to Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the question they want answered. And one of the biggest things that it still astounds me that nobody talks about every day is the fact that you have somebody capable of this horrible crime that, to his credit, Sheriff Nanos did admit that this guy could strike again if he's not caught. That's the other piece. Law enforcement has to catch this guy and anyone else that might have been part of this.
I mean, I don't expect something like that so soon because I think this was targeted. I think this was targeted as a punishment towards Savannah Guthrie for whatever reason. Punishment, punitive, or revenge. And so the person who did it might have been a hired hand of sorts. I mean, they might be a hired hand for somebody else. But I mean, once you get away with something like this, do you truly want to tempt fate? Test your luck? I wouldn't think so. But you never know. They could be anywhere. They could be in Mexico, South America, Europe. They wouldn't know. I mean, are they going to catch somebody in South America? Are they going to catch somebody in Europe? Probably not. So
because there's somebody capable of such an atrocious crime that's still walking around out there.
Yeah. And I mean, being here in the Valley, the Tucson area, certainly like Scottsdale area, there's a lot of retirees and a lot of older women, frankly, are freaked out and they keep talking about it. You know, what happened to her? What happened to her? Matt, as a former prosecutor, what are the conversations happening behind the scenes with the Guthrie family?
Well, hopefully what's happening behind the scenes is there's a prosecutorial team that's been assigned to the case, and they have met with the lead investigators, and what we would always do on ours is as soon as you kind of figure it out, you sit down with the family, you let them, I would always give them my personal cell number. I never regretted doing that, just so they know there's people that care and they understand there's human beings that are working very hard to solve it. And I think that goes a long way. So it's not a mystery to them. You explain the procedure, you explain what you're doing to the.
And honestly, we haven't even talked about this, but if you're Savannah Guthrie, are you even watching any of this? Probably not, right? You're going to just listen to phone calls from law enforcement themselves or Senator Mark Kelly, I think his name is, right? In Arizona. That's probably all you're doing. Maybe occasionally you pop into Brian Etten. Maybe. But I don't know. Do you think Savannah's watching this stuff? I mean, press 1 if you think she is. 2, no, she's just waiting to hear official information because she doesn't want to get caught up in it, caught up in people fabricating things or misinformation, etc. So, what do you think?
Greatest degree that you can in an active investigation without tipping off potential suspects or, because you have to have an open mind to all possibilities of who might have been involved. But you do everything you can to ease their suffering because this is the most apoplectic grief that a family can go through. That's why these fake ransom notes that kept coming in, I think is just some of the most lamentable aspects of the modern age, right? We've got, whenever you make an appeal to the public, you always have well-meaning people who come out who offer information that sometimes helps, but usually it doesn't. I heard a noise down the street, or I heard a woman screaming, but it might have been my neighbor's wife yelling at him. You have to sift through all that. You have your loonies that come out every time. The vampires did it, UFOs took it, but now we have this in the modern era. We have scammers that are going to come out and try to tap into that money. Those things are all fake. I guarantee Jennifer immediately recognized them as being fake, having probably worked it a million times. That's a really sad part of this. So you try to hold their hand as much as you can and let them know that it takes a long time. I did cold cases from the 70s, with serial killers. So you gotta try to get them to be patient, and let them know that there's real pros behind the scenes that have nothing to do with the politics, that are working very hard to bring them justice.
Jennifer, before you go too, clearly the Guthrie family was working hand in hand with the FBI. So, those videos, everything was scripted. That's kind of our understanding. Everything was scripted. People had criticized the Guthrie family.
So unanimously, nobody thinks Savannah watches the YouTube stuff. And I agree. I wouldn't be watching if I were her. I mean, at this point, you're just what? You probably want to stop and smell the roses a little bit, appreciate the time with your kids and your husband, Annie, whomever else, Cameron. And you just want to trust law enforcement to do their job. So watching this in any way, it's really just going to probably upset her and be like, what the frick? Like, Sheriff Nanos, there's no confidence in Sheriff Nanos? What? Is that what anyone wants to hear? If that's the department looking for your missing mother? Oh, by the way, no one has confidence in Sheriff Nanos. Yeah, that's not what anyone in the Guthrie family's position wants to hear.
For not offering a larger reward right away. There was some talk that maybe that would just, cause way too many tips to come in already, more than they already had. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is also going on behind the scenes with the FBI and the Guthrie family? Is there that very specific coordination happening?
Yes, there is. With each of those appeals you saw, that was very scripted, in my opinion. And it was very purposeful. And it's not that the Guthries wouldn't have had some input, because they did, but they were definitely guided by our behavioral analysis unit. And that's the unit, the profilers, what people call them generically, are the individuals that literally sit behind a desk all day long for 8 and 9 hours. They don't go out into the field. They study these cases, and they study like cases, and they study what would work. We saw a very empathetic type appeal over and over again. It's not too late. And when you see these types of appeals systematically betrayed by the family or portrayed by the family, that told me the BAU thinks that they are actually talking either to somebody that might even know Nancy. That's what that
BAU, Behavioral Analysis Unit,
told me at the time. And I still see this soft approach that they are making in their appeals. And that is definitely driven by the BAU.
Yeah, really interesting. I know, and too, in a newsroom environment,
and Mace, that is a very good point, Mace. The Guthrie family could have made a written request to have Sheriff Nanos turn over the case to the FBI. Well, they didn't do that, but that is what turned out to happen anyway. So the 4 detectives and a sergeant from Pima County's law enforcement, they're working with the FBI. And the FBI's task force is now in charge. But the Guthrie family didn't prompt that, as far as we know. Right? That's how it is now. But they didn't do that definitely within the first month to 45 days.
Local news, I've been in it for 22 years now, and occasionally you get some really creepy messages, and there are some people out there that they think that they know you. I know it's happened in pretty much every newsroom that I've worked in, and so we've also thought about, hey, who was watching Savannah too, and seeing the footage of them in Tucson and going to a restaurant together and knowing that Nancy was living alone too. I mean, I'm sure that is also a possibility as well too, that everyone is looking into. Before we go, Jennifer, I know that you have a podcast. Tell the folks a little bit about that and where they can find you.
It's called Break the Case with Jen Coffendaffer, and we have a show every morning at about 8 a.m. Eastern time. And then also you could follow me on X.
She's the opposite of a night owl. The old 8 a.m. Woo.
At Coffendaffer FBI, and then of course I'm on NewsNation.
Yeah. And Matt, I know I see you on TV quite often. All these different specials. I've seen you on 2020, NewsNation. Where can people also learn a little bit more about you?
My Instagram, Matt Murphy Law. I post some clips. Everybody's going to have to suffer through my recent scuba diving trip to Cuba, though. Yeah, but feel free to follow me. I try to answer all the DMs I get personally. So have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah. Are you glad to be out? I mean, obviously you're still in and you're giving your opinion and you're still being interviewed, but are you kind of glad to be out of court right now? Just in life?
You know what? If I may be so bold, I'm going to speak for Jennifer and I both. I miss it.
Yeah, I was writing his information down because I might reach out to him when there's interesting things to go over. I think he'd be a good guest.
Every single day. And I think that, but I don't mess with the politics. But I miss the job. I miss my cops. I miss the purity of the work. It gets in your blood. It's a calling. So yeah, I miss it. But I'm having a lot of fun out here in the big wide world too. Yeah. So all good.
Yeah. And Dr. Fitzpatrick, I know that we've interviewed you. You helped solve actually the canal killer case here in the Phoenix area. Talk a little bit about where people can learn a little bit more about you as well.
Well, mostly identifinders.com. That's our website. I'm also on LinkedIn through my own account and through Identifinders. We're on Facebook. I don't do a lot of videos or podcasts because I don't have time. I'm sorry. I'm interviewed. You can just Google my name. You can see a lot of interviews with me on some of the cases. We've solved some really tough cases and, been in the news a lot. So that's where to contact me. Just go to our website. Mainly that's the best, or LinkedIn.
Yeah. I know we always enjoy talking to you whenever you have the time. And for any of you watching right now, you can always scan the QR code on.
All right. Interesting show. The first time we've seen Fox. We've tuned into them before, but. So we're going to try out Duty Ron.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with Duty Ron and Ed Wallace. Today we have a special guest, retired Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale.
So there's three people: Duty Ron, retired first grade Detective Ed Wallace, and retired NYPD Lieutenant Joe Cardinal. So I don't think I've ever played these guys before. People have mentioned them to me. So let's see what they have to say. We might not watch this whole thing, but let's see. But make sure you like my video while you're here. Likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA in the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello, most importantly, to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. We got a great group of people. Also, make sure you check out Duty Ron's channel as well. Support their work. Support Fox Phoenix 10. That was the channel we just watched. It's important to me to support the people that we watch as well. And let's see how this goes.
Joining us, Nancy Guthrtie, the investigation, day 61. Reports are coming out from NewsNation and other sources. I saw Justin Lum talking about it. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos sent a homicide detective sergeant who's never investigated a homicide to Nancy Guthrie's case. That is compelling for the listening audience, for the public, for everyone worldwide who's watching this. But we had this discussion with the president of the Pima County Union, Deputies Union.
Also, Anxiety Art Adventures. Her name is Laura. She gifted 5 Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. She's headed out for the night, so I wanted to express my gratitude to her as well. And everyone could thank her for doing that, whoever got those memberships. And make sure you check out her channel. She does live sometimes as well and does videos on her channel. Anxiety Art Adventures.
Sergeant Aaron Cross on February 27th, over a month ago. Aaron told you and I, Joe, as we were live about this. So to me, when I heard it, I was like, wait a minute, this really isn't breaking news. We knew about this. So I want to go to, obviously, Ed first, because Ed is on a break, on assignment, and Ed's joining us remotely from an undisclosed location. Ed, your thoughts on this breaking news? That's not really breaking news.
That's correct. It's not breaking news. You know, we knew about it, and it's just another brick in the wall for this sheriff's leadership skills, that he would assign somebody like this to this high-profile investigation with no experience in homicide investigations. So I mean, if you don't have experiences, then you're never really truly going to know what the right things to do are and what the wrong things to
Kat would be all over that another brick in the wall reference.
do are. And, the only way that you come good at conducting criminal investigations is experience. You can have all the book knowledge in the world. You can have all the training in the world. If you don't have experience in these areas, you have nothing.
Yeah. And retired Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale, great friend, personal friend of mine. You have led, homicides, robbery squad, gang unit. You know better than anybody, if you don't have a commander-in-chief that's leading the charge and is backing everybody up and making the right decisions and putting, more importantly, the right people on the jobs. If you have a high-level, high-profile job, as we call it, case, you put your best guys on there. Your thoughts on that, Joe?
You absolutely do, which begs to ask the question, was this person put there just to satisfy the sheriff and have the communication that he needs from within the FBI? Or was he put there because of his competence? Obviously, if he never handled a homicide investigation, I'm sure there's another supervisor who has. So it leaves a lot to the imagination right now. And you're 100% right, and Ed's right as well. When you do these cases, you want to put your best foot forward. You want your best people on it. I want Ed there. I want you there. This way, in my absence, I know that the work will continue the way I want it done as a supervisor, and we get the results we need. But all I'm hearing from day one with the sheriff is how he totally disregarded the best people. Remember, we had the one person that was a good tracker and reassigned someplace else. Nobody knows where he is. He could have been there that day.
See, I shot the cat signal into the sky with the Pink Floyd lyrics, and lo and behold, cat wanders on in. Look what the cat dragged in, as they say.
So, you have the people, you're just not utilizing them. Why? That's the big question.
And Joe, that leads me to the next question is, if you are a commander-in-chief and you're the sheriff of Pima County, and you know that you did transfer your best homicide guy or your best homicide detectives or your supervisor or both, and you have a caper like this, it's the stroke of a pen. As a matter of fact, he probably could just pick up the phone and say, hey, you're working in robbery squad, or you're working answering the phone somewhere, as Aaron Cross is doing, answering phones. I talked to him just today, early this morning. You could just pick up the phone as the Pima County Sheriff and say, hey, you're now reassigned. You got this case. Put that best guy back in.
Okay, so let's see. I'll go over this question for you, Tim. So people were saying about Jen Koffendorfer, people said she didn't have credibility because she served at an airport during her tenure searching bags. What does that basically mean? They're basically saying we're appealing to authority here. And they're saying she can't know what she's talking about because that's what she did in her job. I don't know if that's the only thing she ever did. But to me, that's just an appeal to authority, an attempt to dismiss what she's saying without addressing it. So I don't like those kinds of arguments. If you're going to criticize her for something she's done or said. How about that? Instead of just trying to use their past against them in a way. And again, I've never really had a problem with Jen, but I know some people don't like her. I do think she's a better guest on shows because I think she's more directed, right? And she's a very good guest on the show. I do think that. But thanks for letting me know that, Tim.
The guy's not going to say no, because that would be derelict of your duty. That would be not following an order of your sheriff. So if Sheriff Nanos had any smarts, he would have said, holy shiitake mushrooms, let me get my best guys here, and I'll put my other guys as backup for them that have no experience, and let's collect the doormat. Let's do a good forensic scrub. Let's make a crime scene that's wide and deep. Let's shut down the street that leads to Nancy Guthrie's, because we know that she was taken out of there and there had to have been a route. And they had news reporters camped out right across the street. And as a matter of fact, right on their property line in the early stages of this. So if they would have, and I'm going to go to Ed next, if they would have did the right thing as crime scene investigators or somebody with experience, that whole freaking street would have been closed down for at least 48 hours minimum. Your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, well, I mean, from a forensic perspective, it would have been handled much differently. If I were there, I would have demanded at least two teams, one team for the exterior.
This is the interesting part, right? So we can all criticize local law enforcement, but the real question is, what would they have done differently? And that's what this guy is about to answer here. So I'm going to rewind like 10 seconds. Pay attention to this, because this is the interesting part. What they would have done differently.
And closed down for at least 48 hours minimum. Your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, well, I mean, from a forensic perspective, it would have been handled much differently. If I were there, I would have demanded at least two teams, one team for the exterior of the property, one team for the interior, 3D laser scanned, sketched, photograph, top to bottom, drones up in the air, taking aerial photographs, surveying the area. Then, there's no way I would have left that doormat by the front entrance, right next to the blood drops that are on the portico floor. I would have scooped that up. Plus, I don't know what's inside. And we still haven't truly established the point of entry, but from things that are currently being reported, it appears that it might have been the back door into the location and exiting the front door with Miss Guthrie. So there would be a tremendous amount of work being done here. In addition, there would be all types of forensic evidence searched for: hairs and fibers, blood, DNA, fingerprints, footwear impressions. I imagine the floor inside of that house probably is tiled. And I know that the suspect reached into the plant life over there. And so there could be transfer of all types of evidence.
Right. And if I know you, Ed, there may have been a situation inside that house that you would have ripped up carpeting, pieces of tile, pieces of laminate floor, anything that was
bedding,
that you deemed to be impertinent and important for this investigation. You would have requested that to be removed, or removed it yourself if you could.
Right. If I felt I couldn't process it properly in the field to get the best results, then I always have a saying with my students: when in doubt, cut it out and submit it to the lab. All right. Yeah. If you don't think you can handle that there in the field, if you don't have the skill sets, the equipment, or the training and experience to do it in the field, then submit it to the lab. I mean, I cut out sections of concrete sidewalk. I've cut out sections of a housing authority concrete wall and submitted it to the lab.
Yeah. Here's Scotty Wagner, retired NYPD detective, Harlem, says, I worked quite a few cases with Ed as a crime scene unit. So yeah, Scotty, good to see you, Scotty Wagner. Thank you for joining. Let's listen to this report. Ed, you got a couple more minutes, or do you got to go head back in?
Yeah, I got time.
Okay, here we go, guys.
Past the hour here, and the Pima County, Arizona sheriff is facing a recall hearing next week over his handling of the high-profile Nancy Guthrtie case. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie was last seen January 31st. And now, in a NewsNation exclusive, senior national correspondent Brian Entin just interviewed somebody close to that case who claims the first responders didn't know anything they were doing when they went to the Guthrie home.
The first investigators who responded to Nancy Guthrie's home were inexperienced, and the supervisor had never investigated a homicide before, we are told. This brand new information.
And that's weird, isn't it? Right? How do you become a supervisor if you've never investigated a homicide, period? Don't you think that would be the prerequisite to becoming a supervisor? Having experience in that? But again, if they made the miscalculation that, oh, she just wandered off, then maybe they're going to think that way. Oh, why do they need homicide experience? They just wandered off. Heavy sigh. Heavy sigh.
Is coming from a source close to the investigation who sat down with me for an exclusive interview on NewsNation, giving new insight into the sheriff's department.
Shouty Kathy, thank you very much for becoming a member. You now have access to the members-only live streams. There was one just yesterday, but there will be more.
It's been forced into the national spotlight because of this case.
Hey, Joe, should I play the interview that we did on February 27th?
Yeah, because you can overlap them and show exactly. I mean, I find it comical. I mean, people just pay attention.
This is day 27. So, I mean, good. Look, good reporting. Brian's got information. Maybe he wasn't privy to that. Sergeant Cross, who he interviewed several times, had this information. I don't know if Cross gave it to him, but apparently not. Here's from our show. And Ed, you just let me know if your time is important to you. I know you're doing some secret squirrel stuff. So you just let me know if you got a boogie. We're good with that. Here we go. Ready? Set. This is from February 27th, our interview with our good friend, Pima County deputies president of their union, Sergeant Aaron Cross. This is from the 27th.
Sergeant Aaron Cross. Brian Entin interviewed him before too, multiple times, and he was on Ashley Banfield's show.
Yeah, and the lack of mentorship goes a step even further. Not only are all the expertise and experienced detectives and deputies moved out of those units, but the sergeants were also impacted.
He's moved out everyone. Every sergeant that had experience in the unit that they're overseeing was moved. We find ourselves in a very peculiar situation where our SWAT sergeant was never in SWAT, our K-9 sergeant was never in K-9, our traffic unit was never in traffic. I mean, I could go down the list. Homicide sergeant.
And think, just common sense. Why would you want to have your law enforcement team set up like that? No one having experience with what they're doing. The only possible excuse you can give is if there was just no other way because there was no one that had experience. But if the reason why no one had experience is because Sheriff Nanos pissed them all off and they left, then it's still his fault. So it's just not, that's not how you conduct an investigation if you want to do it successfully, right? You're not setting yourself up for success if everyone's in a position they haven't been in before.
Never worked homicide. There's so many.
So basically, he's saying that Sheriff Nanos removed all of the experienced supervisors and investigators out of their respective squads because of, as we have written down here, his big ego. He's spiteful. He's a micromanager. I even have a Napoleon complex, but I'm not going to say that. So a lot of things written down here, but we'll let the rest of this play. This was on February 27th, on day 27. Now we're on day 61, getting it as breaking news.
So many of these units are being run at the sergeant level by someone who just doesn't know the duties. They have to learn them while they're there. And they're placed in these positions. It's not their fault. They're ordered to go there.
And let's be very clear to our listening audience. This is not something that was created or happened since Nancy Guthrtie went missing. This was a problem that has been, look, I'll run you guys through the rundown. Sheriff Chris Nanos, 40 years of service in the department. He started in 1984 as a corrections officer. His first...
So this is a fair question by Cobra. This is how you do some critical thinking here. Could he have been a supervisor for missing persons? Now that is possible, isn't it? And it might just be framing in a clickbaity way by some people, right? They want to say, oh yes. And gets more clicks to say no homicide experience, but let's leave out the fact that maybe he did have missing persons experience. And then it wouldn't seem so bad. Now that can be true, but what Sergeant Cross also just said doesn't sound good anyway, right? Sergeant Cross is saying people are just not in positions where they have experience, regardless of this. So it's good. It's a good question, though.
Stint was 2015 going into 2016. He was appointed by the Board of Supervisors to complete the term of retired Sheriff Clarence Dupnick. I hope I'm saying that right. Dupnick. Mm-hmm. And then 2016, he lost to Mark Napier, right? And then he had his second stint because he couldn't give up. He couldn't take that he got beat. And then on January 1st of 2021, he beat Napier in the 2020 election. So he took office January 1, 2021. So since 2020, basically 2021, he's been running the show. That's 6 years. Let me just run down really quick what happened in the whole county of Pima County, the whole county crime stats. 2016, we had 2020, we had 16 homicides. 2021, we had 14 homicides. 2022, 15 homicides. 2023, 11 homicides. This is the whole county. 2024, 13. 2025, 7. A total in 6 years of 76 homicides in Pima County. 0 in 2026. So 7 homicides in all of 2025. And those homicides all occurred in the first quarter. In my first year as a New York City police officer, we had 2,200 murders in 1 year in New York City. His burglary numbers, 2020, I'm not gonna break it down, but all in total for 6 years, there was 5,756 burglaries in Pima County. Do you think that Pima County has a problem with burglaries, with break-ins? I think so. And I don't see any plan in place. I looked for any type of publicly posted crime reduction plan. And if I missed it, Sergeant Cross, let me know. I didn't see it. And I did my little detective work and I did my homework. And it doesn't seem like this sheriff initiates any type of initiative to combat larcenies. Larcenies are through the roof. Larcenies are the largest crime in Pima County. Then you got homicides, which was.
And for law enforcement guys, these guys are fairly critical, which you don't see that as much sometimes, right, with other law enforcement. Now, you see it within his own department with Sergeant Aaron Cross here, the union leader, and former Undersheriff Rick Hastiger. But often the retired ones seem to go easier on them, but not these guys, which is good. I think it's because if anything, they have good insight. They know the criticisms to be making.
76 over 6 years, that's 76 too many, right? But you can never stop people from doing committing murder. It happens. But when you have home break-ins, the numbers that I just recited here, 5,756 homes in Pima County were burglarized that were reported. That means that some of the people are scared to report it because they're gang members or people that are bad that they're afraid to report it. So where's the initiative to try to stop this stuff? And of course, in the Catalina foothills, crime in 2023 was a big fat donut. There was nothing going on there. So that tells me that there's probably very few patrols going on around Nancy Guthrie's home, little, if not none. Hey guys, you notice how everything that I'm saying, Sergeant Cross is shaking his head and agreeing with? There's nothing that he said, oh no, you got that wrong. If you have burglaries running through the roof, don't you think, Joe, that you would take the recidivists and drag them in if they're out there and they're not locked up? And
of course we would. We would do that. And that's why on the last show, when you and Ed and I were speaking about it, I said about the quality of life crimes and on the, dusting the cars and everything for prints and everything, because I know since the influx of these illegal migrants, and they're right next to the border over there, they're very close to the border, there has to be something going on for the quality of life crimes, and all these burglaries and these larcenies all tie in together. And they don't have anything to go on because there's nothing for them to, to compare it to. Whereas had they done it from the beginning and had the initiative that you're speaking about, had the sheriff had this foresight to turn around and say, listen, I want to do this. Let's, get a handle on this now. But no, he's too comfortable with the fact like, hey, we only had 76 homicides in this county. I'm doing a great job.
Yeah. And we saw on the Ring video doorbell canvases, remember they plead to the public, hey, look at your rings, go back and look in these specific dates. And then we saw guys with backpacks going through people's property and going through on their property, looking in cars, looking to jump over brick walls. This is not something that's new to Pima County. They have a
By the way, at least we got to get to 300 likes. That's the next milestone here, 300. Likes are free. Leave your DNA in the like button. They help me get Hootie snacks for Shadow the Night Owl. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. We got a great lively bunch. Don't threaten them with a good time. Or as Danielle says, like the button, like the video, and nobody gets hurt.
Problem. And this abduction of Nancy Guthrie, which ultimately, in my opinion, is going to turn into a homicide, started out with somebody breaching her property and breaching her home, whether the doors were left open, whether they talk about these propped open doors, there's sliding doors on the other side of the property. There's all different kinds of points of entry. Ed made a great point and talked about the garage door. When the garage door opened up, there was an opportunity there for someone that's laying in wait to slip on in, right? With that door open. And who knows what the...
So this is interesting to me because we haven't heard too many people talk about this. So I appreciate them talking about the topics that I haven't seen other people talk about as much.
Son-in-law was doing. Did he walk her into the house? We don't know. None of this is... Everybody's speculating about it, but we don't know if he walked his mother-in-law in the house. I know if it was me, I'm not saying this to Monday morning quarterback stuff, but if I went out the day before yesterday out in Suffolk to put up more Ring cameras at my stepmom's. She's 83. I walk her in and out of the house. I make sure she gets in if I'm dropping her off. So who knows what happened? Only the detectives who interviewed him know what he did or know what he said he did. But there's opportunity to get inside the home. Ed, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, think about this. The video, surveillance videos that we've seen aired by the news in this case showed several locations of suspicious characters at night, you know, going around people's properties and looking at ways to get into the property. And in this case, we now know, too, that that perp was wearing the same clothing, came a couple days earlier and was surveying the property here. And burglaries at night when people are inside the house are very, very dangerous, okay? And this is a senior citizen community, this area here. So the odds are that these burglars are going to potentially be confronted by the occupants of these residences. So now, you know, I remember when we first came out of the academy, people saying, "Oh, burglars don't carry guns," and that's just not true. That is not true at all. In fact, Detective Louis Miller from NSU 10 was killed.
I would be very skeptical of any black and white distinctions like that. Oh, burglars don't carry guns. What are you talking about? Sometimes they do. You can't be black and white about that. Are you kidding me? So, I'm not even in law enforcement, and I would know to be a little bit skeptical of sweeping generalizations like that, right?
And Detective Mark Del Pino was shot when they responded to a burglary in progress in the 7-0 precinct. You know, so these are quite dangerous people that are making entry, knowing the possibility is high that there are occupants in there. Okay, it's usually like burglaries, at least in my neck of the woods here in the Brooklyn, in the Flatbush area when I was on patrol. The burglaries were during the day when people were at work and the residences were unoccupied.
And we've heard this before, right? When you come during the day, it's because you're looking for things. If you go at night while they're home, it's because the target is the person, right? And that makes perfect sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. They were less dangerous that way.
You know, the thing of it is, Ed, is there's just so much speculation as it pertains to this case, and so many people are talking about it. Like, you know, Brian, I hear Linda Lane put this comment up. Hey,
and Connie has a great question. Do we know if it was a real gun? We don't know. Right? I don't think we know if it was a real gun or not. We only see it. That's why Maureen affectionately labeled him the front porch phallic bandit. But as far as I know, did we see any exposed gun picture? I don't think so. So is it possible it could have just been a fake gun? Sure. Sure. So that's a very good point, Connie. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Duty Ron, where is it? Shoot, I think it went away, but she was telling us that, oh, here it is. Hey, Ron, have you seen Brian's interview this morning? Had a guy blacked out. It's going to air tonight. Yeah, the guy that was blacked out said exactly what Sergeant Cross said to us on February 27th, that Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos sent a homicide sergeant with no experience. Aaron Cross messaged me this morning at 8 o'clock my time or 9 o'clock my time, and he said, "Hey, Ron, did you see the video that Brian Enton put out? We talked about this on the 27th of February. I told you this on your podcast." So I didn't even see it. I wasn't even aware of it, that interview had just come out. But this has been known to everybody within the department. And Sergeant Cross spoke very candidly about it with myself, Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale, retired, on the night of February 22nd. That's day 27 in this investigation, Linda and chat. So what's breaking right now is, in my opinion, old news, but it's great to keep highlighting it. But I wanted to come live today to talk to you guys about You know, I asked Sergeant Cross this morning, and when we were texting back and forth, I said, "Is there anything going on?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm getting a lot more calls about barking dogs and hose leaks on neighbors' properties and noise complaints, but that's about it."
Hey, Ron, I got to jump out.
All right, Ed, thank you for being here. We'll see you soon, Ed. Be careful.
Good seeing you, Joe.
Same here, my friend. Talk to you soon.
There he goes, Ed Wallace. So, you know, it brings me to this back. We'll circle back to this because I got a couple more things to play. But again, I go to you, Joe, because you're a lieutenant commander, retired. How important, and I keep going back and circling back to this, is how important is the leader who's leading the charge in a case like this?
If you don't have direction at the beginning, right through the case and to the very end of the case, and you don't give the directions that you expect as a squad commander, as a detective sergeant, right? You're not doing anybody any favors by sugarcoating things and putting people in that don't fit into the mold. I mean,
remember, we don't sugarcoat shit around here. We're not Willy Wonka. Heather, thank you very much for the super chat, Heather. Hootie snacks for Shadow. You see that, Shadow? Heather whatever, gave us some hootie snacks. Shadow says thank you very much. And I say thank you very much too. Really appreciate your support. And the proper expression is, we're not Willy Wonka. We don't sugarcoat shit.
My good buddy and my classmate, Scotty Wagner, is listening to this right now. And I would have the confidence in Scotty or in you, or especially with Ed and the whole team together, because I know I'm going to get the job done. But if somebody came to me, you, Scott, or Ed, and said, "Why is so-and-so here? He or she has zero experience with this," I'm going to find something for that person to do other than get into the middle of this thing without just sitting back and teaching them from that point. But I would most certainly would not let them take the lead on it. No uncertain terms, I would not let them take the lead on that. And Ron, I just want to touch on something before you put this back to the screen. What Ed said and what you said a few moments ago was so crucial, because speculation is so much on this case. The back door finally came to light because Savannah put it out there. All right. That makes you think about that person coming to the front door and saying exactly what you said. Did they take her out through the front door because they couldn't take her out through the back for whatever reason? So they had to get her out.
And that's a good point he just made there too. We only know about those prop doors in the back because of Savannah. So what else does Savannah know that law enforcement just decided we didn't need to know? Probably more. But Savannah thinks, you know what? I think if Savannah thought that if law enforcement was withholding something that Savannah thought could help the case, she'd probably say something. But I guess she doesn't think there is what I would guess. But it also shows you there's certainly more things that we just don't know because they're not telling us. So we're in the dark.
They send this person goes to the front knowing that camera is active and has to disable it. All right, at that point, because if they disabled it beforehand, then that's a problem in itself. So these things combined with what time the garage closed tells me a lot. All right, tells me a lot that investigators do have things that they're not letting out, which is good. I like that. But it also quiets the speculation as to how did they get in now. If this is the way they came in, it explains what Ed was speaking about, removing somebody from through means of the front door.
Yeah, 100%, boss. This case, 61 days in, we're no closer to knowing what's going on. And look, we could argue that the public doesn't really have a right to know. But as a medium, I think Aaron referred to his department as a medium-sized department. As a medium-sized department, you have a public information.
So let's do a little experiment here. I like this view. We don't see this view too much of Nancy's house. So this circular archway here, right? I guess that's the front door. Or is it this here? I think it's this. So chances are Do you think a vehicle pulled through the driveway up into this point where it just wouldn't be able to be seen by the Nest Cam? They come up, or maybe they go circle around multiple people. They maybe knock her out with something, maybe punch her, unfortunately, and they pull her into this and then drive through. But wouldn't you also expect there to be tire tracks, right? Is that gravel? Like, what is the driveway made of there? Do we know? It's one of those things I didn't think about. If it's just like a driveway, then we're not going to see anything. But it almost looks like it's like gravelly or something. And in which case there would be some tracks maybe. Or do you think they didn't even do that and they were just on the street? I don't know. But I would imagine they wouldn't want a chance going to the street, right? They want to keep her out of sight as fast as possible, right? That's what I would think.
Officer, what harm does it do to especially, and I'm thinking about the residents of Pima County, and in particular, the Catalina foothills. There's residents that are elderly who are scared to death, Joe. And I keep bringing this up because we all have elderly family members. My stepmom's in her 80s. She lives alone. She gets frightened, and she would be frightened to death if there was a homicidal maniac or maniacs, plural, on the loose, unapprehended, right? And you're now not getting into any direction from your elected sheriff. His office is giving donuts out. And that is leading to false speculation. It's leading to people to make wild accusations and pointing fingers at people who are innocent, pointing fingers at maybe people who are not innocent, and nothing's happening. And there's no direction. There's no keeping the community informed. When you are locking hands with your community, that's community policing at its best. You need to let your people know who elected you, who pay their taxes, that you're doing something. We don't know.
You're right. You're right. I'll tell you why you're right, because you would hope that since the task force has been established and you have 5 of your people assigned there, regardless if he's qualified or not at this point and why he's there, but you have 5 people there that are working this case. You as a sheriff, and I do have a good friend of mine, Paul Arteta, who is the Orange County, New York sheriff, who is great for this job because he would be, and I know because you speak to people like this, he's out there, and then you would be sending your deputies out there door to door, reassuring them, listen, can we look at what you have here? Can we recommend this? Here is our number direct. Reassuring the public that you are behind them, that no matter what's going on nationally with this case, locally, we still care, and this is what we're doing. And you can make the recommendations for cameras, of getting more of an updated contact for relatives. You seize the opportunity to do 2 things. You put the community at ease, and you update your information for everybody in that area and what cameras they have, not just for now, but for future reference, that at this angle, you could go to this home and this is what they have.
Right. Well said, boss. And I wish that they had somebody with half of the competence that you have. You're extremely competent, and you know how to conduct these types of investigations. I feel extremely competent because of what? Repetitions, going and doing this over, and repetitiveness. I want to talk about day 20, February 20th, 2026. We reported a private helicopter doing a pattern search at a landfill that was...
I remember this. Haven't heard about some of these things for a long time. Like, think about, of the 60 days of this case, the things that were very important briefly, but then were never followed up on, such as the septic tank. Right? Whatever happened with that? Nothing. What happened with the helicopter? Nothing. What happened at Annie's house? We don't know. What happened with Nancy's car? What happened with Annie's car? We don't know. We don't know. What happened to the geofencing with the phones? We don't know. Did they ever get their phones back? The first dude Carlos or Luke Daly or his mother? Did everyone get their phones back? We don't know. So many unanswered questions, right?
Where the garbage from the Catalina foothills goes. We never heard anything about that at all. As a matter of fact, the Pima County Sheriffs didn't even mention it. We were able to see it through flight radar. And a lot of times when you deal with some of these aircraft from law enforcement, sometimes they can mask the plane's identifier. So this came in February 20th, private helicopter doing a pattern grid search, and we showed it. It was very, very distinct, and that happened on day 20. Also, we had the Rio Rico resident search warrants and the vehicle after a traffic stop on February 10th into February 11th, and then Friday the 13th, we had that big FBI SWAT search warrant at the resident.
Of all the days, remember Friday the 13th, February? That was the day that I almost thought there was something they got. I didn't think so at first because the energy didn't seem right. But as time went on, I got convinced. I was like, you know what? Maybe there is something going on here. And it turns out, no, there was not. I was like, did they find Nancy? Did they make an arrest? What's going on here? And that was the night of Luke Daly and his mother. But it was nothing. It was nothing. But that was the closest it ever felt to finding something. And again, though, if there wasn't so many eyeballs in the case, would people have even thought, oh yeah, we're close? I think it was really just because there were so many eyeballs on the case. It made it seem like it. But it was really just a nothing burger.
It's 2 miles from Nancy's home where the Range Rover was taken into custody. No, what would it hurt them to give updates on these investigatory steps that we know about as civilians, the public? I want to go to the chat. Let us know where you're watching, city, state. And we have a lot of new subscribers, Joe. You know, we're up to 670,000 subscribers. And I want to thank everybody for being here because the live chat, that's the heartbeat of this community. And we love our live chatters and our replay viewers. So let us know where you're watching and let us know, too, what you think happened to Nancy Guthrtie. We're open to any and all suggestions. And we like to have this sort of like open forum, community chat, like a town hall meeting, so to speak. So we have people checking in from El Segundo, California, Ohio.
So let's pause this one here, 2945. Tony Bruschi has an interesting video that I want to check out here. The search for Nancy Guthrtie. The life story no one is told. So this is going to be interesting, I think. It's a different thing here.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
More than 500 people filled a church in the Catalina foothills on a Wednesday night. Some of them drove from Phoenix. Some of them had never met Nancy Guthrtie. They lit candles, placed them on an altar, and prayed for a woman whose name most of the country had only learned 48 hours earlier.
By the way, please remember to like the video, spank that like button if you feel so inclined. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And remember, super chats are a great way to get questions answered and to support the channel. So are super stickers, and becoming a channel member supports the channel and gives you access to the members only live streams. And I was thinking also, Lindsay, she has, it might be an opportunity to bring other people on occasionally as well in the members only to kind of share their story. It'd be similar to a call-in, except not quite. It'd be a little bit different.
People inside that church weren't praying for a headline. They weren't praying for a case number or a missing poster or the mother of a famous television anchor. They were praying for Nancy, the woman who showed up to St. Anthony's Presbyterian every Sunday for 30 years. The woman who made committee meetings fun. The woman who laughed about javelins eating her garden. The general public learned Nancy Guthrie's name because of a crime. Tucson has known her name for more than 5 decades. And the distance between those two versions of Nancy, the one in the news, all the alerts, all the headlines, and the one in the hearts of the people who love her, is the entire point of this video. Because Nancy Guthrie is not a case file. She is a life. And it's a life worth knowing. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27th, 1942 in Fort Wright, Kentucky, at a small city in Kenton County, just across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. She grew up Catholic, St. Agnes Elementary, then Notre Dame Academy, an all-girls school. She graduated from Notre Dame Academy in 1959 and headed to the University of Kentucky, where she did something that would feel familiar to anyone who knows her family story. She became a journalist. Nancy worked for the Kentucky Kernel, the university's student-run newspaper, as the society editor. She covered Greek life. She maintained a column. She was in the newsroom at least 3 days a week. Her editor at the Kernel, a man named Jack Guthrie, no relation, remembered her decades later. He described her as a skilled writer, friendly, polite, someone who did her job well and did it consistently. This was the early 1960s. Nancy Long was building a foundation that none of them knew would echo forward into the career of one of the most recognizable broadcast journalists in America. But we'll get there. First, there was a basketball game. A blind date at a University of Kentucky game, to be specific. A young man walked up to the door of Nancy's sorority, and she looked at him and said, whoever was standing next to her, that's
terrible optics for Sheriff Nanos at that basketball game, right? There was no need for that. You're right in the middle of the tragedy, the first 48 hours or 72 hours, and you're already being seen taking leisure at a basketball game. Just not good for optics. A narcissistic person like Sheriff Nanos should know that. An image-oriented person like him.
The man I'm going to marry. His name was Charles Errol Guthrie. He was a Georgia Tech graduate, a mining engineer from Pineville, Kentucky. And Nancy was right. They married on December 28th, 1963, according to their wedding announcement in the Cincinnati Enquirer. That one moment tells you everything about who Nancy Guthrie is. Decisive, clear-eyed, unafraid to say what she sees. She saw her future walk up to a door, and she claimed it out loud before he even opened his mouth. That's not a woman who waits for life to happen to her. That's a woman who walks towards it.
Tony Bruschi does a hell of a good editorial sometimes. It's almost like he would do spoken word. He's the spoken word of true crime. He adds the adjectives, the editorial adjectives of the true crime space.
Charles' career took them around the world. His work as a mining engineer landed them in Melbourne, Australia, the suburb of Beaumaris, where their youngest child, Savannah, was born on December 27th, 1971. Nancy was a full-time mother by then, raising 3 children, Cameron, Annie, and Savannah. When Savannah was 2, the family left Australia and settled in Tucson, Arizona, moving into a burnt adobe home in the Catalina foothills near Campbell Avenue and Skyline Drive. The desert became home. Nancy would live in that house for more than 50 years. And look at what she built inside it. Cameron became the fighter pilot in the Air National Guard. Annie became a poet, a jeweler, and a teacher at the University of Arizona Poetry Center. She's published a book on the craft of jewelry and had her work appear in literary journals. And Savannah became one of the most watched morning television anchors in America, co-hosting the Today Show, graduating cum laude from the University of Arizona with a journalism degree, earning a law degree from Georgetown magna cum laude, and scoring first on the Arizona bar exam. When Savannah talks about how she ended up in journalism, she points to one person, her mother. Nancy encouraged her to study it. Nancy planted the seed. No network did that. No producer, no agent. Nancy did that. In a house in the desert, raising her children with intention and presence and a clarity about who they could become. That is a legacy that existed long before a single camera was ever pointed at any of them. And then on June 10th, 1988, everything stopped. Charles Guthrie died of a heart attack during a work trip to Mexico. He was 49 years old. Nancy was 46. Savannah was 16, about to start her senior year of high school. One morning, the family had a father, a husband, a future built around a man who was tall and affectionate and funny, who demanded moral clarity in a way that could be intimidating, but who could also turn a mundane trip to the post office into a story worth telling. And the next morning, he was gone. Savannah has talked about those early days. She remembers hearing her mother crying before dawn in the quiet hours when Nancy thought her children were still asleep. She remembers the grief being enormous and sudden and disorienting. But she also remembers something else. She remembers what Nancy said to her children in those first raw, unsteady days after Charles died. Nancy had read it in a book that meant a lot to her in her grief, and she repeated it like a compass heading. You have to get up and decide and do. Just decide and do.
Nancy Guthrie with the positive motivation. Just got to get up and do, and put one foot in front of the other. I can dig it. I can pick up what Nancy Guthrie's putting down. I also liked her wisdom about saying if Savannah Guthrie doesn't feel like she can leave me, then I didn't do my job. And that tells you Nancy Guthrie wasn't going to be controlling. She wasn't going to smother Savannah. She wanted to see her children succeed. And it takes wisdom to understand that. And a lot of times that's one thing mothers can struggle with, and men too, fathers too sometimes, but they don't want to let the kids leave the nest sometimes. They want them to stay close. But Nancy Guthrie, I think, had the wisdom to say, no, Savannah, you live your life to the fullest. I'm not going to hold you back in the slightest. And I respect that. I really respect that.
That wasn't a slogan. That was a survival strategy. And Nancy lived it. She had 3 children to raise. She had her own aging mother to care for. She had a brother with Down syndrome who needed her, and she was doing all of it alone. At 46, after spending nearly 2 decades as a full-time mother, she had no career to fall back on. She had no professional network waiting to catch her. She had a family that needed her to stand up, and she stood up. Nancy went to work at the University of Arizona. She took a position starting as a clerk by some accounts, or in public relations, depending on the source, specifically so that her daughters, Savannah and Annie, could attend the university tuition-free as children of an employee. That was the calculation. That was the math of a mother who had just lost everything and immediately started building something new so her children wouldn't lose anything more. She didn't just show up for a paycheck. She built a career. She became the spokeswoman for the University Medical Center. She created something called the Center Stage Program, a series of monthly lunchtime musical performances at the hospital, bringing in musicians from the university and beyond to play for staff, patients, and visitors. Think about that. A woman processing the worst grief of her life, walking into a hospital every day and deciding that what the people inside needed was music. That's not someone surviving. That's someone still giving. Nancy rose to associate to the vice president of university advancement. She coordinated efforts to help the university's department, which were, by her colleagues' account, doing great work in isolation, broaden their reach and tell their stories beyond their own walls. She led committee meetings that people actually looked forward to attending. Elizabeth Irvin, a retired vice provost at the University of Arizona, said Nancy kept those meetings upbeat and fun. Irvin said you never would have guessed this woman was in the early years of a brand new career born out of the worst chapter of her life. a former reporter who covered health care for local Tucson papers and interacted regularly with the PR team at the medical center, called Nancy level-headed, accommodating, gracious, and completely upfront. In 2000, Nancy was elected president of the Southern Arizona chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. She worked at the university from 1990 until January 1st of 2007, nearly 17 years. Meanwhile, something quieter was happening back at the house in the Catalina foothills. Savannah and Annie both attended the University of Arizona, had made an unspoken pact between them. Even though
they're both wildcats, just like in the movie Speed, where Sandra Bullock's character has an Arizona shirt, I think it was. And what was his name? Dennis Hopper, the bad guy in Speed, calls her a wildcat, I believe. And that's how they were able to figure out the fact that he was seeing them on camera. So random association there with the term Arizona, which made me think of wildcats, which made me think of Sandra Bullock in Speed.
Were college students. One of them would always stay home on a weekend night so their mother wouldn't be alone. Nancy never asked for that. She never put that expectation on them. They just did it. Savannah talked about it years later, calling it something they did together as sisters. It tells you everything about the kind of loyalty Nancy inspired. Not by demanding it, not by guilting anyone into it, but by being the kind of mother whose presence you didn't want to leave empty. In the decades after Charles' death, Nancy became more than a woman, or the woman who held her family together. She became the center of a community. She was a devoted member of St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Tucson, a congregant for 30 years, according to her pastor, John Tittle. Her attendance was so consistent, so reliable, that when she didn't show up for a service virtually on Sunday, February 1st, 2026, a church friend immediately called the family. That's not what happens when a casual attendee misses a week. That's what happens when the people around you know your rhythms because you've shown up for them every single week for 3 decades. Friends and community members have described Nancy the same way over and over. Sally Charmel, a family friend of more than 30 years and a former KVOA reporter who once worked alongside Savannah, called the Guthries a very revered family in Tucson and said what was happening was absolutely heart-wrenching. Former colleagues from the university talked about her warmth and professionalism. Her pastor prayed for her from the same pulpit where she sat every Sunday. And she was a grandmother. Savannah's children, Vale, now 11, and Charlie, 9, and Annie's son, all had Nancy in their lives in that close, consistent, present way that only happens when a grandmother refuses to be distant. Savannah said Nancy was so good at playing with them. She used the word spunky. Al Roker, Savannah's Today Show colleagues, described Nancy as having a wicked sense of humor. Savannah called her whip-smart, funny, full of integrity and wisdom, and always up for something fun. In 2012, when Nancy turned 70, Savannah said publicly that her mother inspires everyone who knows her and has the best sense of adventure. In 2015, Nancy traveled back to Melbourne, Australia with Savannah. They visited the hospital where Savannah was born and the house where the family had once lived. Nancy looked around at the country she hadn't seen in more than 4 decades and said with quiet wonder that she never thought she'd see Australia again. They packed the whole trip into 3 days. In November of 25, Nancy appeared alongside Savannah and Annie in a Today segment filmed in Tucson. They sat together at El Charro, the oldest family-owned Mexican restaurant in America, sharing lunch and a few sips of tequila. Savannah asked her mother what made her want to put down roots in Tucson all those years ago, and Nancy smiled. She said the quality of life was laid back and gentle, and then laughing, she added, "I like to watch the javelins eat my plants." That was Nancy. That is Nancy. A woman who saw a man at a sorority door in Kentucky and knew her life was about to start. A woman who buried that man 25 years later and somehow found the strength to tell her children to get up and decide to do. A woman who took care of her kids, her mother, her brother, and then built a career from nothing so her daughters could go to college. A woman who brought music into a hospital because she understood that people in hard places still need beauty. A woman who stayed in the same house for 50 years because she still felt her husband in the walls. A woman whose church knew her so well that one missed Sunday was enough to sound the alarm. Savannah said it best in a tribute for Nancy's 80th birthday. She said her mother met unthinkable challenges with grit, without self-pity, with determination, and always with unshakable faith. She said Nancy loved her family fiercely and that her selflessness, her sacrifice, her steadfastness, and her unmovable confidence were the reason any of them grew up to do anything. The world is searching for Nancy Guthrtie, but I want you to understand who they're searching for. Not a victim, not a statistic, not a name on a poster. They're searching for the woman who decided and did. The woman who rebuilt everything. The woman who was still laughing about javelin.
Yes. When you like my video and subscribe to my channel, you are focusing on the man who decided and did, who manifested 40,000 subscribers and counting to talk about true crime, current events, psychology, and narcissistic abuse. Decide and did. Decide and do.
3 months before she was taken from the home she loved. That's the Nancy no one knew, and now you do. Your thoughts in the comments section on Substack and YouTube.
How about that? Good little spoken word. Little spoken word there by Tony Bruski. Now we can play out some Duty Ron maybe before we end it.
Ohio, Southern Illinois, the United Kingdom, Virginia is here, Central California. Hey, Sandy, good to see you. Langley, British Columbia. Hey, Nancy, good to see you. Hello from Buffalo. Joe, my sister went to Buffalo U. The snow that those guys get up there, man, you need a snowmobile to get around in the wintertime. Hey, St. Louis, thanks for kicking the Mets' ass in this series. Good to see you, Sheila. Thank you for joining.
Janie, I definitely am live right now, Janie. But we play a lot of videos here too. But sometimes I'll just talk as well. Let's see. Mr. Brewski, it's been a lean... How about that, Candace? I like that, though. Sort of like how the lawyer of Nick Reiner, Alan Jackson, had his print that. I like Nancy Guthrie's decide and do. Decide and do. Christy, welcome. Thank goodness we have a longer stream today, or you might have missed us. We're at 3 hours and 30 minutes, but we're glad you came by. You decided and did. You decided and did to stop by. And what did you miss? More importantly, what did you miss? Well, we missed a little more detail about why the detectives are unhappy with Sheriff Nanos. The supervisor of the case had no homicide experience. That doesn't mean they had no missing persons experience, by the way. That would have been a good follow-up question to ask. Okay, no homicide experience, but do they have missing persons experience? Would have been interesting. And what else? About they wish Sheriff Nanos would shut up. How there's no confidence with him right now. They didn't like how it was run in the beginning. Yes, only less than 10 likes to 300. So while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free, and Shadow the Night Owl here, he definitely appreciates it. Helps him get his Hootie snacks. I'm going to have a little bowl of Hootie snacks. There's even nutritional value that Rooster sent me of Hooter snacks. Hooter snacks. Hootie snacks. Kristen. Zip your lip. That's what they wanted him to do, Heather, but it was hard for him to do. But that's why former Undersheriff Rick Castiger and Sergeant Cross, they're out, they're on him. And rightfully so. And the guy Brian Etten interviewed, he was anonymous for a reason. You are about the only one. Let's see what Dana says. You are about the only one that keeps talking until you run out of stuff. That's true. Most guys, gals stop in an hour or so. That's one of the reasons I like the black sheep. We can chat for hours. Like they say, time flies when you're having fun. And when you're in good company, the time just flies. Hello there, Reggie. Glad you decided and did to come by here. That's going to be a future reference now, too. Decide and do is what Nancy Guthrtie said after she lost her husband. We must decide and do, to which I agree. Ha ha, Debbie. Decide and do, my diet mantra that never works. Well, as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. That's right, no hype. And we're always hyped to see no hype. And would we have it any other way? On the vampire shift? The graveyard shift? I was thinking about that term, the graveyard shift, the other day. Why is it called the graveyard shift? Did they only ever dig graves at nighttime to be sensible? So they wouldn't see people digging graves during the day? Hence the graveyard shift? Or is there other things they only did at nighttime? Like put caskets in the ground? I don't know. Nancy Grace said LOL stands for little old ladies. I wouldn't be surprised if Nancy Grace said that. Nancy Grace and Erica Kirk might go to the same eye doctors. Both got that intense stare. That brunette with blue eyes stare. Ooh. Not me, Miss Kim. We're going to get 300 likes before we know it. I used to work the graveyard to swing shift, doing valet parking. I can relate to that, Heather. When I was a taxi driver, when I did Uber and Lyft afterwards, I was a night owl. It was kind of my natural shift, though. The taxi shift would end around 5 a.m. It was pretty cool, though. I liked it. And that was back when taxi made some good cash. And that was back when everyone did it because there was no Uber and Lyft back then. So, oh my God, you get a whole new education when you're a taxi driver, I'll tell you. There would be like, you see the underbelly of society, whether it's drug people, prostitutes, what else? Just all the wild things that happen. They call it the cash cab. People used to think I was Adam Levine back then. But it was fun. There was no better way to make money and have fun than to do that. But then Uber and Lyft came around and ruined it. And Ted, as a hotel auditor, you can probably see some interesting stuff at a hotel. But a lot of it really just depends on what your location, right? Like a hotel in Las Vegas, for example. Holy mackerel. You probably see some wild stuff there. Bronx, welcome. Hero stories. I've been in some fights. I wouldn't necessarily call them hero stories. I had to think back. There's so many stories I should have wrote them down. Occasionally you rescue. I don't know. You see some wild stuff when you're driving around that time of night. You see some assaults. You see people just getting out of prison. That would all depend, Justin. That would all depend. You've had your nose broke. Yeah, I've been punched for sure. Absolutely. It's dangerous. Back then, there was no... Even Uber and Lyft is dangerous too. I mean, even though they can track who you are, with the taxi, there's nothing. Like, there's no safeguards. Some people would run from the car. You know, it was fun for a while. And then Uber and Lyft came around and ruined it. And then sometimes I lived by Philadelphia. in the wildest place by Philadelphia is Kensington. Kensington is the wild, wild west of addiction and drugs and all sorts. I just came home from the casino cover band Hairball. Interesting. I learned Macaulay Culkin was in a cover band before, and he actually got booed off the stage. Yes. 1%ers, eh? The people I was in trouble with were in Camden. Just hooligans. Yeah, Randizzle, Uber and Lyft was great in the beginning, right? When they were still kind of in competition with the taxis. They actually paid people pretty good in the beginning, and you can make a small fortune for that job, considering you are running your own vehicle. But then what happened over time, as everyone expected, when the taxis were killed, Uber and Lyft would pay the drivers less and then start charging the passengers more. And of course, it got ruined. And that's what happened now. Stax runs a taxi too. There are occasionally places where taxis can still do okay, but it's just not as good as it once was. Imagine all the people that had a medallion. Do you know what a medallion is? Big cities, you have to buy a medallion to be a taxi driver. And those things were to run a taxi company. And they were worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And then Uber and Lyft came around, made them useless. So people that invested in a taxi medallion might have been shit out of luck. But it depends. I'm not sure. It'd be a good question how much you can sell a taxi medallion in New York for example. Yeah, well, I've had a wild life as well, Randizzle, but that's how you become well-rounded. You get a good mixture of street smarts and education. Yes, we got where's Maureen been, by the way? Not Maureen O'Connell, but the Maureen of the flock of black sheep. Where has she been? She's also an Englander. She a West End girl? Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, taxis is one of those things where it's unfortunate what happened to the business because it's not necessarily skilled labor, but that used to be a good job for people in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s, 2000s. You could make good money driving a cab, and you could even maybe support a family driving a cab. Not anymore. Uber and Lyft is a part-time job. Yeah, and that's what happens, Christy. So Uber and Lyft are expensive for the passengers, but they're not paying the drivers anything because Uber and Lyft they're basically just running the platform. The driver takes the risk. The driver runs their car into the ground, but they're not getting compensated for it. Over 10 years of inflation ago, I would get paid $3.25 a mile and a $10 minimum fare. And again, I stress 10 years plus of inflation ago. For frame of reference, Uber and Lyft pays their drivers 70 cents a mile. 10 years of inflation later. So think about that. They fucked it all up. But that's happened. That's what happens though, right? That's what happened to mom and pop hardware stores. There used to be mom and pop hardware stores. And then Home Depot and Lowe's came around and destroyed them. There used to be mom and pop pharmacies. And then CVS and Walgreens came around and destroyed them. So, but most people just don't know, right? But that's what corporations can do. Uber and Lyft, they were able to run at a loss for multiple years. A small business can't run at a loss for multiple years, but Uber and Lyft can because they didn't need to be profitable yet. So they undercut the competition, put most of the taxis out of business. And then once most of them are out of business, the competition's gone. Now you can jack the prices and make profit. It's wild. Used to be mom and pop print shops. Oh, yeah. It used to be mom and pop everything. Now, mom and pops would be a little more expensive. And yes, no hype. Amazon itself right now, it's killing everything because now Amazon has their fingers in every industry. Books, music, supplements, you name it. Amazon has their fingers in it. And that's to see a lot of gig jobs, right? There's DoorDash, Uber Eats, the Amazon drivers. I used to deliver Chinese food, chicken to China, the Chinese chicken. Had a drumstick, but the rain kept ticking. That was actually a good job because they would pay you like $7-8 under the table. And if you were at a busy Chinese place, you could make a few $100 a day. Jackie says, I got my victim impact letter done for someone coming up for parole. Not on my watch. Thanks for the company, Jared and chat. Oh, you're very welcome, Jackie. Oh, so were you the impact? Were you the victim? Well, whatever happened there, I'm very sorry that happened to you, Jackie. And I know the flock of black sheep has your back here too. If you ever want to talk about something in the future, makes me mad to hear something happened to you. Tech's next thing you know, Tech's gonna have a mustache and a white van. Imagine if you're a white van salesman. What do people think of the white van salesman? Especially a used white van salesman. It's like, who are you trying to abduct with this thing? Maybe you can get away with it if you're a painter. Like, oh, I'm a painter. Or I'm a contractor, so I have a white van. I'm very sorry to hear that, Jackie. Did you want to mention what happened? Hopefully you can hear what I just said there. That's right, Tech. Gotta watch out for that, the pedo van. Those vans, they got a bad rap, those vans, don't they? You have a great night, Bronx. One of my last tattoos I've gotten in the Bronx. No, it was Brooklyn, excuse me. 300 likes. Shadow the Night Owl says thank you. He's going to be eating some hootie snacks tonight. How about that, Randizzle? Rightfully so, Tech. Rightfully so. G.I. Joe says, make sure you don't go in any strangers' vans. Now you know, G.I. Joe. Yeah, Dana, we're going to wrap it up here in a minute. We're just kind of bullshitting now. Gary Ridgway? Wasn't Gary Ridgway the, what California killer? What was he called? Golden State Killer? Good night, Dana. We'll be back again tomorrow. Friday and Saturday night. They're the action-packed nights, I'm learning. Favorite lesson from Bronx Tale, Rooster? When the guy gets pissed that the dude doesn't pay him back $20. And Sonny, the guy's name's Sonny in the Bronx Tale. He goes, hey, so what are you getting so mad for? You pay $20, you never have to see him again. What the hell's wrong with this kid? Or the door test? That's another question for the chat. What's the modern day equivalent of the door test for women? Women probably wouldn't even like it. They go, you should be testing women. But you better believe women probably have tests for men. Well, very sorry to hear that, Jackie. Hopefully, things are going better for you now after all that. You might be entered into an FBI database searching for white vans. All right, Tim. We'll see you tomorrow night, sir. Soulfly, take it easy. Yeah, I don't know if I told you this before, Jackie, but I used to be a mentor for kids that were taken by CPS. And that was, it's meaningful work. Didn't really pay much, but, it was good for the kids to have a mentor. The kids were like 5 to 12. And, the parents were on drugs and all sorts of wild things. It wasn't very good. Well, it's my pleasure, Jackie. Got to look out for the flock of black sheep here, Oh, Schulfly. Chester the molester, they say. Right, Rooster? The old Gary Ridgway. The Golden State Killer. All right, Jane. Yep, I'll see you all tomorrow night. The kids are bad compared to 10 years ago? How so? As in misbehaved? Taken at birth. Not adopted, but taken. It's almost like the music video of Runaway Train by Soul Train or Soul Asylum. Hey there, Lindsay. Welcome back. In regards to the Guthrie case, I think the perps were well versed in some aspects of the kidnapping, such as little to no DNA, which tells me the perps have a history in committing crimes. I would say they're certainly not as much of a novice as people were saying they were. Oh, look at them novices. They look at them picking up leaves and trying to cover the nest cam. They're stupid. It's like, well, Green River Killer. I got my serial killers mixed. Thank you, Candace. The old Green River Killer. I think Mike King talked a little bit about him in his book. That makes you grow up fast, doesn't it, Jackie? On your own since you were 14? That's wild. Thank you, Randizzle. But all right, folks. About time to wrap up this joint. But we'll be back again tomorrow night. Hopefully there's some interesting new developments. Again, Christian John I'll be talking to next Tuesday. We'll see how that goes. I spoke to a doctor today about kratom. I'm not sure if anyone has any interest in that. But I'm a libertarian when it comes to that kind of thing. So I would like to see all those supplements and plant medicines remain legal. So we'll see. We'll see if there's interest in that. No, I guess not, Jackie, right? Whereas dealing with cameras, that guy wasn't the main dude. He didn't have much experience dealing with cameras. Maybe that guy stayed out of the house. Yeah, it's possible. I think there's multiple people. Yeah, Jackie, that's when someone's, do you think you have like a better sense of sight or touch? Often when someone doesn't have one, they have a they get gifted in another area. I don't know if that's a myth or not, but I've heard that can happen. Yes, Heather, you have a great night. Tech, no hype, Dee, Rooster, Mace, Christy, Teresa. Yeah, it's pretty young, isn't it, Teresa? 14 years old. Yeah, I hear you, Jackie. I hear you. You have a great night, Reggie. Oh, Kat, welcome back, Kat. Hi and bye, Kat. You have to tell us more about it sometime, Jackie. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. And you probably have a lot of hope to share. Unbelievable. That makes sense, Heather. That makes sense. But all right, everybody. Justin, you have a good night as well. Short and sweet indeed, Kat. And Jackie, you take care of yourself as well. Like I said, hopefully things are going better for you now. I don't know where you are in life or how old you are, but I'm glad you found us. And I think, and I know, the rest of the flock of black sheep is glad you found us too. All right, Jackie, sounds good. So maybe tomorrow night we can talk a little bit about that if you're here. So, all right, everybody. Ted, you have a great night as well. Till next time, we'll see you all tomorrow.